Chapter 105. After some discussion, it was Feng Bujue who came up with a suggestion that everyone was satisfied with. Underworld Frontline. It was not that he was good at coming up with names as a novelist, but the inspiration for this name came from a crazy manager who called himself the Devil. When Feng Bujue was thinking, the interaction with Woody during the day flashed across his mind, and he came up with this name. In the end, no one had any objections. Perhaps it was because they had rejected too many weird club names, and their patience was wearing thin. Or perhaps it was because everyone's attention was starting to wander, and they wanted to get something done as soon as possible. In any case, since no one objected, Underworld Frontline was considered a unanimous decision. Feng Bujue then returned to the login lobby to submit the name. When the system said, "The club name can be used," he sighed in relief. He was really worried that someone had already used the name, and they would have to come up with another one. After he received the name list, the item appeared in his inventory. It was a piece of paper that looked like a form, and it came with a fountain pen. These two things together took up one item. Name, signature list, Underworld Frontline, item type, consumable quality, normal function, apply to form a club, remark. After receiving this item, if it is not submitted within 24 hours, the item will disappear automatically. Every player can only receive one signature list per day. Players who have already joined a club will not be able to receive one. After collecting 4 signatures, submit them and pay 100,000 game coins. The club will be formed, and the members on the name list will be accepted as club members. Taking the list back to the meeting room, Feng Bujue asked for everyone's opinion. He asked who they would like to be the leader of the club. Passing Rain originally wanted Feng Bujue to be the leader. Xiao Tan obviously supported Brother Ju, since he would not be able to take up the role. Laughing Soul did not have a position. It did not matter to her who was the leader. However, she was not willing. Her original words were, "You want me to be the leader? Firstly, I don't have that kind of aura. Secondly, I'm not interested." Therefore, Feng Bujue could not reject it. He thought about it for a few seconds and sighed. He signed his in-game ID, Feng Bujue, on the captain's signature and handed the name list to the other 3. When the 4 names appeared on the paper, Feng Bujue picked it up, returned to the login space, and submitted it to the system. Verifying signature player information. Please wait. Please confirm your application. Create a guild. Health Frontline. Feng Bujue pressed the confirm option. Your application is valid. After reconfirmation, the club will be officially established and will cost you 100,000 game coins. Please ensure that you have enough game coins on you. Game coins in storage and mail cannot be used for this operation before you proceed. After clicking confirm again, the signature slip in Feng Bujue's hand quickly turned into white light and disappeared. The next second, he received a series of system notifications. Moreover, the text on the touch screen and the voice in his ear appeared at the same time, indicating that the content was quite important. Club, Underworld Frontline established successfully. You have joined the club, Underworld Frontline. You have become the leader of the club, Underworld Frontline. For more details, please click the link below. Club shared storage has been unlocked. Club buff will be unlocked after 24 hours. 2 buffs will be given based on your club's ranking on the related ranking. Bonus EXP for club members has been unlocked. Would you like to set up the club badge now? If you do not, the default design will be used. When he saw the last sentence, Feng Bujue saw the default design of the badge appear on the screen before him. It was a simple dark gray shield with the words Underworld Frontline written in white before the shield. Feng Bujue did not change it because he remembered that the game manual mentioned that the first change was free, but if he wanted to change it again, he would have to spend money. The actual cost would depend on the number of members in the club. The more members a club had, the more expensive it would be to change the badge. At the same time, Feng Bujue glanced at the social tab. Other than friends, players who have recently played the game with him, and blacklist, there was now a club category. Just as he was about to return to the meeting room, Feng Bujue noticed that there was a new button on the control panel of the elevator. It said Public Storage. The default access to the storage was that only the guild leader could store game coins and items, and the other guild members could only store them. Of course, it should be empty now. Feng Bujue returned to the meeting room and said, "This is quite troublesome. It's already so troublesome to set up the organization, let alone manage it." He was a very responsible person. As long as he obtained some kind of power, even if it was a very small power, he hoped that he could fulfill the corresponding obligations perfectly. Either he did not care, or he had to manage it well. Having a clear conscience was not enough. That was only the attitude. A capable person must have a clear conscience and let others have nothing to say about it. Actually, under normal circumstances, Feng Bujue would have chosen not to have any power from start. Therefore, before this, he still had a glimmer of hope that he would give the position of leader to someone else. Alas, in the end, he was the leader. With his personality, what came next was indeed troublesome. The three in the meeting room heard the system announcement, and the badges appeared on their apparel. On Xiao Tan and Laughing Soul's apparel, the club badge appeared on the armband around their left arm. Since Passing Rain's apparel was sleeveless, the badge appeared on her left collarbone, in the style of a chest badge. "Brother Bujue, did you design this badge?" Xiao Tan asked. "It's the system's default," Feng Bujue replied. "I've taken a look. There are many pictures to choose from, and you can even draw your own. But we have to be democratic to the end. What if I come up with something weird without telling you? Then you'll have to force me to spend money to change it. The logo will be in the shape of a black goat's head with 2 red eyes. The background will be in the shape of a gray flame, and the words will be in black with a red border around them." Passing Rain immediately came up with a very specific design. The symbol of a devil and a flame. It matches the name of the club. How did you come up with an idea so soon? And it's very reliable, Feng Bujue asked. "That's normal. You're good at writing, but I'm not allowed to be good at drawing," Passing Rain replied. "Oh, you're a designer? An engineer? A comic artist?" Feng Bujue asked. "Give me the vice leader's power, and I'll handle it. Go play your killing game." Passing Rain did not answer him, but changed the topic. Chapter 106. After Feng Bujue returned to the login lobby, the first thing he did was to leave the party so that Xiao Tan and the others would not be able to join the queue when they queued up for the scenario later. He had already given Passing Rain the right to be the deputy leader, so she would be in charge of the badge. Although there was an accident where she disconnected once, judging from her usual performance, she was obviously a very reliable person. She would not mess up the task that she took on herself. Feng Bujue did not queue up for the scenario immediately. After spending 100,000 game coins, he still had 379,000 game coins, which was enough for him to equip himself. He first went to the shop in Zone 10 and sold the children's baseball bat to the system shop. The price was F*King reasonable. It was only 1,000 game coins, which was 50 cents. It was very suitable for the equipment that had no attack power and no useful attributes. Bullets, supplements, and lighting equipment were the supplies that Feng Bujue planned to buy, but he was not in a hurry to buy them. Instead, he browsed through the clothing items. Those were the things that cost a lot of money and could increase attributes, and they were things that he would have to buy sooner or later. He wanted to see what he could buy with his 380,000 game coins. Feng Bujue did not care much about his image in the game, but it did not mean that he did not care about it at all. He did not think it was a big deal to wear the default newbie outfit. After all, everyone had to wear it, and it was free. However, since he had to spend money to buy it, he did not want to put together a messy outfit just to increase his attributes. After all, he was not confident that he could wear something like Brother Sharp. In front of a sea of clothes, looking through them one by one would probably take him until the sun came up. Therefore, Feng Bujue naturally had his own choices. In the beginning, he was a little impulsive and had a strong urge to buy a set of American manga characters' clothes to play with. However, he soon realized that the specific American comic character outfits were all shockingly expensive. For example, the Dr. Destruction outfit cost 900,000 game coins. The outfit was divided into 3 parts: the mask and armor, the outer garment, and the hooded cloak. There were 3 parts that could increase attributes. However, this outfit could not be bought separately. He could only buy them all at once for 900,000 game coins. Feng Bujue's game coins didn't seem to be enough. Compare to players like Xiao Tan and Laughing Soul who could spend 1 million game coins, or about 500 renminbi, to buy a 5-slot inventory space. Feng Bujue had 380,000 game coins, which was about 190 renminbi. His plan was to earn money for a gaming cabin, and that was definitely a long way to go. One had to know that the NL 2055 standard single-player gaming cabin he was using was priced at 5 digits. With the price of 2 gaming cabins, he could buy a car. Of course, that did not include the license plate. Actually, this set isn't that great. The hood is green, and the armor plus the cloak makes it inconvenient to move around. Feng Bujue comforted himself. After that, he searched for another character that he wanted to get his hands on, Deadpool. The red and black outfit was relatively tight, and there was no cloak or anything like that. It was definitely convenient for him to move around, and the belt and straps on his body could help him carry swords, guns, and other equipment, saving space in his backpack. There were only 2 parts to this set, the headgear and the full-body set. In other words, it only added 2 attributes. However, the Deadpool set cost 700,000 game coins. Feng Bujue comforted himself again. It's too cheap and too perverted. It doesn't fit my tall image. If his words were heard by others, they would definitely ask him 2 questions. The first question would be, then why are you still searching? The second question would be, what's wrong with your image? He looked through many other characters, and in conclusion, the sets that had a certain image were all sold for 500,000 game coins and above. The most outrageous one was the Batman set, which actually cost 2 million game coins. According to the exchange rate this week, that was about 1,000 game coins. Of course, this set was indeed superior. It was divided into 5 parts: the headgear, the top, the bottom, the belt, and the cloak. The clothing bar was divided into head, feet, top, bottom, and accessories. No matter how many parts a set image had, even if there was only 1 part, all 5 slots would be filled. It was equivalent to adding 5 attributes, and it could also hide a lot of tool-type equipment, which saved a lot of space in the inventory. Feng Bujue gave up after reading too many of them. It looked like a set was not something he could afford. He decided to buy the individual pieces and match them himself. He would go with the most conventional method of top and bottom. Once he had the 2 buffs, if he had enough money left, he would consider accessories. Thinking that, Feng Bujue suddenly had an idea. He searched by color and style, and successfully found a combination that he was very satisfied with. He then smiled proudly. If Batman was a profession, then in addition to one's innate abilities, there should be another requirement, which was a family fortune of 700 million game coins. But the cost of becoming his opponent was very low. For example, the person who gave him the most trouble was full of contempt and mockery for money and life. Feng Bujue spent 120,000 game coins to buy a top. The style of the outfit was a purple blazer that reached his knees. It was lined with a dark blue checkered shirt, a dark green blazer, and a tie. He then spent 80,000 game coins on a pair of trousers that were a little darker than the purple coat as the bottom. Finally, he spent 40,000 game coins on a pair of dark leather gloves. After spending a total of 240,000 game coins, Feng Bujue settled on his Joker suit. Of course, he didn't go so far as to dye his hair green, cover his face with white foundation, cut his cheeks with a knife, and put on lipstick. He wasn't that crazy. After purchasing the apparel, if he wanted to equip it, he had to choose the random attribute. The 3 attributes that came from the upper body were slight increase in stamina points recovery rate, slight decrease in stamina points consumption when moving heavy objects, and slight increase in life points recovery rate. Feng Bujue chose the life points recovery speed without much thought because it could be used for his body enhancement spell. In theory, the body enhancement spell could still be used in the later stages of the game, so the attributes that could be used together with it were good. The attributes that came from the bottom were a little shocking. They were, when standing upside down, with one's own strength, stamina points recovery speed is significantly increased, slight increase in jumping height, and large increase in mana points recovery speed, but life points recovery speed is decreased by the same ratio. Of the 3 options, the last one was the first that Feng Bujue gave up on. The more he looked at the first option, the more ridiculous it seemed. Even though it said significant increase when he was doing handstand, his stamina points should have been decreasing as well. After all that, it was no different from a slight increase, right? It felt like they were toying with him. Therefore, Fong Bujue chose the second one, the one that looked normal. The gloves were an accessory, and the attributes that Fong Bujue drew were slight decrease in stamina points recovery speed when carrying heavy objects, slight decrease in bleeding effect, and slight increase in fist strength. The three had their own preferences. The first was more neutral, the second was more defensive, and the third was more offensive. Fong Bujue thought about it and chose the second option. He already had 3 weapons, the wrench, the knife, and the pistol. He could choose from any of them. Since he had the choice, there was no need to use his fist for this slight increase in stamina points. It was like throwing away a watermelon for a sesame seed. Furthermore, Fong Bujue still remembered how badly passing Rain had been tortured by the bleeding effect in the scenario that Yi Jie had played in high school. There was no one in the club who specialized in medic, so he could not have prepared bandages, antidotes, and other items that could neutralize special effects in his inventory. It was not that he did not have enough money, but he did not have enough inventory. Therefore, he chose this special effect just in case. Furthermore, the gloves were cheap. When he had more money, he could spend 40,000 renminbi to buy another pair of gloves with 3 random attributes. With that in mind, Fong Bujue slapped his forehead and said, "Hey, I forgot to ask Xiao Tan to return the Winchester to me. I haven't seen him for a few days, so there's an 80% chance he has forgotten about it." However, he shrugged and thought, but that weapon is quite useful. It's not a bad idea for him to have it. It'll be of great help to him. After Fong Bujue decided on the attributes of the outfit, he concluded that after spending 240,000 life points, the recovery speed of his life points had increased, the height of his jump had increased, and when he was afflicted with the bleeding status, the loss of life points would slow down slightly. Other than that, he had established his own style in terms of appearance. On his apparel tab, there were currently 2 empty slots, the head and the feet. However, Fong Bujue still had 140,000 game coins left. If he bought one, he would not be able to afford the other. Furthermore, he planned to buy some supplies, so he ended the apparel tab. The equipment was already in the apparel tab, but the appearance could only be changed in the login lobby. Therefore, the player's appearance would not change in the public area. Fong Bujue then bought 5 health potions. He did not buy large potions, but life points recovery potions, medium. In terms of price, the recovery potions were not set according to the ratio. A small potion that recovered 30% cost 2,000 game coins. A medium potion that recovered 50% cost 6,000 game coins, and a large potion that recovered full cost 12,000 game coins. This kind of pricing was obviously based on the common remark of the health potions in Thriller Paradise. The maximum number of stacks is 5. Continuous use of this item will weaken the effect. It seemed like the small potions were a good deal, but if he drank them repeatedly, 3 small potions might only recover a little more life points than 1 medium potion of the same price, and it would take up more inventory space. To put it bluntly, buying a large potion was the safest and most space efficient. Naturally, this kind of safe and convenient experience would cost more money. In the end, Fong Bujue bought a flashlight and 2 corresponding magazines for the pistol. Each magazine had 7 bullets. Since he still had 1 bullet left in his gun, the 2 magazines each took up 1 inventory space. Thankfully, he had bought the apparel. Even though it did not come with its own scabbard and ammo pouch like professional apparel, the suit jacket had several pockets. After changing, he could place the magazines inside the jacket. After the shopping, Fong Bujue left the market and returned to the login lobby. After the elevator door closed, he received the system announcement. Your apparel tab has been opened. Chapter 107. The game menu appeared before Fong Bujue's eyes. An arrow pointed at the apparel, and the system audio said, "When you adjust the items in the apparel to a satisfactory state, you can choose the change option in the login lobby, and the system will update your character's appearance. If you remove all the apparel, or set them to be hidden before changing. Your character will return to the appearance of the default apparel. Hint: the player cannot move the apparel into or out of the apparel in any scenario. You can move the apparel into other public spaces, but your character's appearance will not change. You can only change the apparel in the login lobby. After Feng Bujua heard the hint, a floating window popped up before his eyes. Please confirm whether the apparel that you are wearing is loaded with other items. If so, when you complete the change, the loaded items will be moved to your inventory or storage room. If you do not have enough space, these items will be converted into system mail and sent to your mailbox. The mail will be saved for 24 hours in real life. That is quite a thoughtful reminder, Feng Bujua mumbled. However, he was wearing the default apparel for newbies, and the design of the pockets only allowed him to store sand. He set all the apparel to be displayed, but the mask remained hidden. His feet continued to show the jazz shoes, and he clicked confirm again. Then, Feng Bujua dissolved into white light. It looked like he had been teleported into the scenario. In a flash, the change was complete. Feng Bujua was quite satisfied with his new appearance in the mirror. When the apparel was displayed, the inventory that was slung across his chest was hidden, and he could not even feel it on his back. When the player wanted to retrieve an item, they could reach into the original inventory, and the item would come out from a dimensional crack. Earlier, Feng Bujua had spent 30,000 game coins to purchase the supplies, so he still had 104,600 game coins. It was necessary for him to keep this money with him. If he spent all his money, even if he got the equipment that could be sold for a good price, it would be awkward if he did not even have the processing fee to pay for it. With regard to the 1080 skill points, Feng Bujua decided to keep them for now. He was not lacking equipment, but combat experience. The Echo armor had been sitting in his inventory for 3 scenarios already, and he still had not equipped it. Time and time again, he had hoped that he would be able to raise his mastery to the level required to equip it, but it failed every single time. From the looks of it, it was unrealistic to raise his general mastery to level C at level 15. He could only hope that his workmanship mastery would be improved in the next killing game. Actually, Feng Bujua had only used 20 minutes of virtual time from the start to the end, including the shopping and preparation. However, in that short amount of time, Passing Rain had completed the design of the guild badge. Actually, when Feng Bujua returned to the login lobby, the badge on the left sleeve of his newbie outfit had been changed, but he did not notice it at the time. It was not until he looked into the mirror that he noticed the change. He then looked at the guild tab in the social tab. Wang Tanji, Laughing Soul, and Passing Rain were all in-game, but in reality, they had not been in the queue for long. In the friend tab, other than the 3 of them, Long Aomin's name was still grayed out. Brother Long was probably not going to come online that night, so Chungu decided to leave the matter of joining a guild for another time. Feng Bujua removed the 2 magazines from his inventory and placed them in the inner pocket of his suit. He took a deep breath and turned his attention back to the touchscreen. He opened the scenario menu. When players reached level 15, they had officially finished the newbie phase and the early stage of advancement, and they had entered the middle stage of the game. From level 5 to level 14, there were only 2 game modes, but now there were 4. Solo Survival Mode, Normal, Solo Survival Mode, Nightmare, Team Survival Mode, Normal, and Killing Game. Among them, there were 4 ways to play Killing Game: 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, and random 3 to 6 player free-for-all. For the first 3 ways, players could queue up to join the game and encounter random enemies. You could also choose to enter as a party, but the party members had to be in the same faction, so at most 3 players could queue together. A 4-man team could not play the Killing Game, and a 3-man team could only play 3v3, not 2v2. In short, the idea of planting a spy on the other side was impossible. There is another way to enter the game, and that was through challenge. Inviting other players to enter the enemy's territory to fight with you was a must. However, there were some conditions that had to be set. First, the challenger and the challenged had to be on each other's social tab. In other words, it was one of Friends, Blacklist, Recently Players, and Guild. Blacklist was a passive option in Thriller Paradise, so if you had only heard of a player's ID but had not met them in-game, the only way was to add them as a friend, and after they agreed, you could challenge them. This prevented the players on the leaderboard from being blindly challenged every day. At most, every time they returned to the login space, they would have to reject a large number of friend requests and delete a large number of emails. After becoming a celebrity, they naturally had to bear this pressure. They did not have to worry about rejecting those who they really wanted to add as a friend, because they could find them in recently players. The second condition of challenge was that other than the 1v1, the other party had to be in a team. This was to prevent the phenomenon of spies. For example, in a 3v3 mode, 3 people would challenge one person, and that person was actually in the same group as them and planned to be a spy to take down 2 of their teammates who joined the game. That would not happen. This was because the challenge from a team of 3 had to be accepted by a team of 3 as well. Of course, if there was a random queue, there might be people from both camps who knew each other. Even though that was rare, if it did happen, the system's concept of AF King could be applied to killing games as well, and it would not be as simple as increasing the terror points of the person who betrayed his teammates. In Killing Game, players who were judged to be helping the other team or purposely taking advantage of their teammates would have their skill points reduced. After reducing the skill points gained from the current scenario, it would start to reduce the skill points that they already had. If they did not have much to begin with, it could even be reduced to a negative value. Therefore, if a player purposely caused trouble in Killing Game, the loss of skill points would be huge. Other than the forced disconnection after a certain amount of time, the loss of skill points would be huge. Players who were detected to have this type of behavior multiple times and had the tendency to act recklessly would have their accounts banned. The last way to play the game was a random free-for-all between 3 to 6 people. That was easy to understand. They could only fight one-on-one until there was only one person left. The last one to survive would be the winner. During the closed beta, Phantom Dawn had run into his 3 teammates from regulation under this mode, and he had mercilessly killed all of them. This kind of thing would only happen during the closed beta because at the time, there were only a limited number of high-level players who could play this mode. That was why the 4 of them had run into each other. Now that it was still in the open beta, they probably would not be able to do it even if they wanted to. Fong Bujue had already decided to try Killing Game when he reached level 15, but since this was his first time, he did not have much hope of winning. His main goal was to familiarize himself with the new mode, so he did not plan to join in a battle with a large number of people. 1. He was afraid of being a burden to others, and 2. He was afraid of being killed before he knew how to play the game. Therefore, Fong Bujue chose Killing Game, clicked on 1v1, and entered the random queue. Chapter 108. Fong Bujue, Level 15. Please select the game mode that you wish to join. You have selected Killing Game 1v1. Please confirm. Confirmed. Generating scenario. Downloading. Please wait a moment. Then, everything before Fong Bujue's eyes turned dark, and some words appeared before his eyes. The subtitles and the voice prompt scrolled up. The core of the Killing Game is the combat between players. In this mode, the horror element of the scenario itself will be weakened, and there will be a chance to trigger any world building or mission. The size of the map will be based on the number of players and their individual ability. You can see the IGN, level, and life status of your teammates and opponents in the Team tab. Player interaction rules, AE, in Team Survival mode, will still apply to this mode. If you're not familiar with these rules, please click the link below to read them. The above hints are provided when you first joined the Killing Game. Good luck in the game. After reading the hints, Fong Bujue did not hear the voice of "Welcome to Thriller Paradise." Instead, he heard a male voice with a Hokkien accent say, "Make your opponents shiver. Let them experience true terror." So, the opening of this Killing Game scenario was different. After that, the hint for the next step appeared. Download complete. You are currently playing the Killing Game. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there's a chance to trigger hidden side missions and special world building. Reward for winning the scenario, 50 skill points. Playing the scenario introduction soon. The game will start immediately after that. The opening cinematic appeared before Fong Bujue's eyes. It was an empty and dark environment. He was standing on a flat mountain, and to his right was a mountain wall. The wall was filled with dried bodies and skeletons. A hazy moon illuminated this mournful scene. Then, he heard an unbelievable scenario introduction. The legend of the demonic realm taints the land of the gods, and the legend of the Xian sect shakes the world. Xian Yuan seeks defeat in this life, and Gui Jiang seeks to rebuild the world. Hey, what the hell is going on? This is the thunderous land. Feng Bujue had a bad feeling in his heart. The night of the eclipse of the moon, shrouded in a sorrowful fog. The dim starlight shines on the hanging life lanterns. Eerie green light, illusory, ghostly shadows, just like the realm of hell. Under the wall of hanging corpses, a strong wind blew. There were two people from another world. One of them had a restrained expression and waited nervously, while the other held a sword and waited quietly. Who won? Who lost? Who would die? Who gave birth? So it's for real, Feng Bujue said. Speaking of which, based on the way things are going, is it going to be an encounter right from the start? Indeed, he guessed correctly. That was the synopsis of the scenario. After it was over, Feng Bujue regained the ability to move. He immediately turned to look around and realized that about 100 meters behind him, there was a figure standing there. Just like him, the person had just turned around. Main mission has been triggered. Kill all enemy team members. Hidden mission triggered. Create a poetic title that belongs to you and obtain a spiritual weapon that corresponds to it. The system announcement came one after another. Feng Bujue was rendered speechless by this scenario. The hidden mission just popped out like that, and from the content of the mission, he could obtain the reward inside the scenario. What kind of game was this? Actually, this setting was the system leaving a way out for players like Feng Bujue. A 1v1 killing game was normally not that complicated. There were many situations where players would fight as soon as they met, and the result would be decided in a few minutes. Therefore, the reward for the winner was small, and the loser would get nothing other than some skill points from the battle. However, under rare circumstances, there were scenarios where the 1v1 could last for several hours or even a day or two. For example, two players with marksmanship mastery were tossed onto a large, isolated island, and the system had set up a forest, a secret research center, a pirate base, and so on. Under those circumstances, there would be plenty of side quests, and the victory reward would be higher. In a 2v2, 3v3, or free-for-all killing game, the scenario would be more complicated. The system might have the players join different factions or toss the players into a relatively independent environment with a high degree of freedom. Then, the system would set up some strange rules like the school's 7 unthinkables to give players who are good at strategizing more space to shine. However, in a 1v1 scenario, there were more simple and direct scenarios. Fighting players were the mainstream, and they had a big advantage. And puzzle-solving players. Take Feng Bujue's current situation as an example. If the system did not give him this hidden mission, he would not have been able to fight it. Now that he had the chance, it was up to him whether he could grasp it or not. Of course, this mission was given to both parties, so it was very fair. If Feng Bujue's opponent was both smart and brave, then there was nothing to be said. He should have won. A player who was both smart and brave would be able to win a 1v1 battle against a player who was purely a decider or brawler. Feng Bujue was really unlucky. He just so happened to run into an opponent who could be described as skilled in both the pen and the sword. This person's name was Blade Runner, and he belonged to the guild, Jianghu. He was one of the signature players of Jianghu, together with their guild leader, Enigmatic Smile, and another superstar professional player, Bladeless Swordsman. They were known as the 3 experts of Jianghu. Speaking of Child Jian, Laughing Master, and Bladeless, even Brahmin, who prided themselves on fighting ability, had to admit their strength. In fact, Brahmin and Regulation, the 2 industry leaders, had tried to recruit the 3 of them, but they had been rejected time and time again. Regulation had even come up with a merger plan to swallow the whole Jianghu, but the plan was not implemented in the end. After all, this was a business. Buying a company for 3 players was not something the management would agree to. If the three of them left Regulation after the merger and formed their own company, then Regulation would be giving them money for free. With Blade Runner's ability, it was not a problem for him to get into the top 20 on the combat ability ranking, but currently, he was not on the ranking. This was because during the closed beta, he had not logged in after creating his character. It was not until the open beta that he started to level up. Similar to Fong Bujue, he had just reached level 15, and this was his first time entering the killing game. However, Blade Runner was different from the top players from Regulation. He had entered the game late not because he did not want to play the closed beta, but because he really could not find the time to do so. Jiang, who was a grassroots company in real life. Its initial size was similar to Hyodiai's group, led by Atobi Sama. World's Enigma, Bladeless Swordsman, and Blade Runner were the initial members of the studio. The three of them did not come from a rich family like Atobi Sama. If Atobi Sama did not make a name for himself, at most, he would have wasted some of his family's money, but the three of them owed money to the bank and their friends and relatives. If the studio failed, then the worst and most likely result would have been their parents accompanying them on the streets to hide from their debts. Thankfully, they succeeded. Using their own ability and management, the three of them managed the studio to its current size. Jiang, who was one of the top players in the industry. After clearing their debt, the company moved into a dedicated office building, and the number of employees was over 100. In a way, they had turned from professional players into young entrepreneurs. However, in the world of professional players, the time of retirement was often not decided by them. This world was indeed very much like a Jianghu. How could experts retire just because they wanted to? Moreover, how many experts in this world would be willing to retire while they were still capable of fighting? Therefore, the three leaders of Dao Jian and Dao Jian still had to do the work personally. They not only had to manage the things outside the game, they also had to manage the in-game club. During the closed beta, they did not have time to log into the game. The studio was expanding into a new game project, so there were too many things to do. Actually, they were still busy. Before everything was on track, they could only log in at night when they were sleeping. Back to the current killing game. The fact that Fong Bujue and Blade Runner were arranged to fight in the same match proved one thing. Obviously, the system thought that he was as powerful as his opponent. The biggest level difference in the killing game was 5 levels. In the same scenario, be it the same team or the enemy, there would not be 2 players with a difference of 6 levels. If 2 players with a level difference of more than 5 levels formed a team, they would not be able to join the team. In a group battle, the system would try its best to arrange for 2 teams of similar strength to meet each other. In a 1v1 battle, the system would not allow 2 players with a huge difference in strength to fight one-on-one. Therefore, theoretically speaking, in every killing game, either side had the chance to win, including this one. The guy opposite looks like he specializes in combat. This is not good. Fong Bujue mumbled softly. He looked at Blade Runner from afar. The man was wearing a long black satin robe, and his hair was tied up in a ponytail. The long sword in his hand was already drawn, and it glinted coldly. Combining this man's ID and the opening cinematic sentence, a cold and solemn man with a sword in his hand, Fong Bujue understood many things. However, when Blade Runner looked at Fong Bujue, he had a hard time figuring out his style. The man in the distance was wearing a long, purple suit. He looked like he was cosplaying as the Joker from Batman. The weapons in his hands appeared to be a pistol and a wrench. Blade Runner could not help but be confused. What is this man doing? Based on his attire, he does not look like a player who focuses on physical strength. The melee weapon in his hand is a tool, and the other is a long-ranged weapon. Is he training his workmanship along with his marksmanship? The cold and solemn man with a calm expression mentioned by the system earlier was referring to him, right? In other words, this man looks calm, but is actually not confident. The standoff between the two did not last long. Blade Runner made the first move. He was quite confident in his own ability. In any case, he would attack first to test the waters. After all, it was not like he had to spend money to test the waters. If his opponent was unable to withstand a single blow, then it would be because he was lucky. Flashes of sword was enveloped in a thick layer of energy, and he charged forward. The murderous aura soared into the clouds. The color of the sky changed, and dark clouds covered the night sky. That voice with a Hokkien accent once again sounded in his ears. Huh. Both Feng Bujue and Blade Runner had the same reaction. They could hear the narration of a fight in this scenario. Following the narration, the sky really did darken. The wind was stronger than before, and the dark clouds covered the moon. Fine, you win. Feng Bujue turned to run. After hearing the sharp narration, he had lost all desire to fight the man head-on. He decided to run first. Blade Runner saw that Feng Bujue was going to run, and he felt more confident. This was also his first time playing a killing game, and this was the first time he had fought another player in Thriller Paradise. Initially, he was quite cautious of his opponent's ability, but Feng Bujue's escape was no doubt a sign of weakness. Seeing this, Blade Runner let loose and chased after Feng Bujue with brute force and aggression. Like a swimming dragon, like a wing, looking for a gap to escape from the battle. Hurry, hurry, hurry! Feng Bujue saw that he could not fight back, so he turned and ran. The sword is like the sea, the air is like the waves, the sword is like the roaring waves. Blade Runner charged forward with his sword. The murderous aura around him grew. It was as vast as the clouds, and it was as powerful as the heavens. Are you kidding me? I'm running, but I can still make it sound so cool. Feng Bujue screamed as he ran. Blade Runner was running about 10 meters behind him. He smiled. My friend, once you accept this kind of setting, it is quite interesting. Bang! Feng Bujue did not answer. He turned back and fired a shot. He used up the remaining bullet in his M1911A1. Then he removed the magazine and ran forward without slowing down. He took out a full magazine from the inside pocket of his suit. Looks like your marksmanship is only SOSO. Blade Runner laughed coldly. The bullet did not even graze him. He was still chasing after Feng Bujue. Even if Feng Bujue stood still and aimed, it would be difficult to hit a moving target, much less when he was running. Actually, his aim for this shot was not to hit the target, but to see his opponent's reaction. In the end, Blade Runner's reaction was not good for Feng Bujue. Flashes of sword did not evade after hearing the gunshot, and he did not slow down either. This could only mean two things. One, his mental fortitude was impeccable. At least in the game, he could overcome some of the human's instinctive reactions. Two, and this was one of the conditions that allowed him to achieve the first condition, he must have some way to block bullets. The most troublesome thing was that he had even commented on Feng Bujue's marksmanship with a hint of mockery. To be able to catch up to Feng Bujue, who had Jazz Dancer while running and still have the energy to speak, his physical strength was not to be underestimated. Psalm. Feng Bujue mumbled like his life depended on it. He was urging his brain to work faster. I have to come up with one soon, or else I'm dead meat. Chapter 109. The whirlpool of clouds changes slightly, and thunder rumbles. Footsteps as dense as rain, stepping on the barren land. A figure as swift as the wind, sweeping past the desolate cliff. The difference in foundation is too great, and the difference in combat ability is clear. Blade Runner does not wish to prolong the battle. Facing the fleeing opponent, he used a killing move. The narration was slightly slower than what was actually happening. After all, the system needed time to translate what was happening into words. So when the description entered Feng Bujue's ears, Blade Runner's attack had already arrived. Blade Runner swung his sword forward, and instantly the blade glinted coldly. Under the dim moonlight, the figure danced. At the moment when he held his breath, the glint of the sword was the only movement. It was concentrated and focused. The clouds covered the moon, and the moment the ground was covered in darkness, he attacked. Blade Runner dashed forward, and the distance of more than 10 steps disappeared. The first attack caused thousands of clanging sounds. Under the cliff, in the wilderness, the sound of the sword was exceptionally loud. At that moment, it was Blade Runner who used the skill of his title, Fast as the Wind, Shining Shadow / Name, Shining Shadow / Special Skill Type, Active consumption: 15% of maximum stamina points, 15% of maximum sorcery points effect. Instantly appear in front of a target within 10 meters and gain an 80% increase in attack speed. Last for 3 seconds. Cooldown of 10 minutes. Remark: a sword skill that intersects light and darkness. It is incredibly fast and incredibly dangerous. It will catch the enemy off guard and catch them off guard. When Blade Runner suddenly appeared in front of Feng Bujue, the latter almost could not stop himself from crashing into his opponent's sword. Thankfully, Feng Bujue reacted quickly. He instinctively dodged to the side and raised the wrench to block. The blade of the sword and the wrench came into contact and brushed past each other. Sparks flew and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. But Feng Bujue only managed to block the first slash and avoid being hit in his vitals. Then, when he brushed past Blade Runner, the latter's sword danced, and with the buff from his attack speed, he landed multiple slashes on Feng Bujue, leaving wounds on his left leg, left shoulder, and back. They were inflicted with the bleeding effect. Feng Bujue took out his unique weapon and used it to turn the tables around. He used his amazing agility to evade the enemy's attacks. Every step is dangerous, but the moment of alertness is not as fast as the moment of the blade. Feng Bujue's sword pierced through the gap, leaving behind a trail of blood. "You sure know how to praise me. I'm about to be hacked to death." Feng Bujue continued to run forward, which meant that he had not surrendered yet. He knew very well that the skill that Blade Runner used could not be used consecutively within a short period of time, or else it would not look like the skill of a level 15 player. It would look more like a level 25 player. Cold eyes attack like the wind. Just as the moon shone, Blade Runner turned to give chase. With a flick of his wrist, it was the second attack. Again, when Feng Bujue heard the commentary, his opponent's second attack was already inches away, and the tip of the blade was almost touching his back. Wild steps howl. The shadow of the blade is merciless. At this point, Blade Runner did not think that the narration would cause any awkwardness. In fact, he was quite high. This second skill was his normal skill, lunge. Since Feng Bujue had not pulled away from him yet, he could make use of this movement to chase after him. At that moment, Blade Runner had basically figured out Feng Bujue's background, and his heart calmed. From the way Feng Bujue blocked the attack, he did not look like a player who specialized in fighting. Even though escaping from the Shining Shadow slash was praiseworthy, that was it. With this kind of speed, he would not be able to dodge this attack, and the battle would be over after this attack. The night is silent, and only the wind can be seen. Blood pierces through the air. The sword that will decide the outcome of the battle has missed. Is that so? Blade Runner's skill missed, and his expression shifted. He saw Feng Bujue's speed suddenly increase, and the distance between them increased by more than 10 meters. There was even a light scent of blood in the air. Humph! It's not that simple. The kid has been holding back. Blade Runner smiled, and his desire to fight grew. It seems like defeat is imminent, and life and death are on the line. Feng Bujue suddenly used a strange skill and changed his body. His nimble body moved as fast as lightning. Bang, 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 bang. Since he had activated body enhancement spell, Feng Bujue would not just run. After creating a certain distance, he turned around and aimed at Blade Runner. He raised his gun and fired. In less than 10 seconds, he finished a magazine of bullets. This kind of long-range attack is useless. Blade Runner smiled and closed in again. It wasn't that he had a passive skill that allowed him to ignore bullets. Instead, it was because the defensive equipment on his body, including the hidden helmet, armor, and greaves, all had refractive attributes and were of excellent quality. Handgun bullets would have a hard time dealing damage to Blade Runner. Unless the opponent was a good marksman and could hit the same spot multiple times or aim for his eyes or neck, they would not be able to break through his defense. Of course, if one used a Winchester within 10 meters or a rifle a long distance, they could still deal some damage, but the problem was that Feng Bujue did not have those conditions. He was not a marksmanship player. After removing the magazine and reloading the last magazine, Feng Bujue put the gun away. A hasty repair is useless, and the child's leg can only be used on monsters. I have no time to use decisive victory, and it is pointless in a battle like this, Feng Bujue said to himself. The only skill I can use is body enhancement spell, but he is not much better. It looked like he was running away, but in reality, Feng Bujue had been calmly analyzing his opponent's situation. This guy has already used 2 active skills. The first is teleportation and attack power. It is most likely a tidal skill, and the cooldown will not be over so soon. Even if the second skill does not have a cooldown, it is just a powerful attack, so it should be dodged. Feng Bujue took out the dagger from his inventory and held it in his left hand. His right hand was still holding the wrench. With the buff from Casey Jones' mask, my fighting mastery is D, and he has the same level as me, so his fighting mastery is at most D as well. Theoretically speaking, we should be on the same level, so I was able to escape from his ultimate skill without using any skills. As he thought about that, his opponent was slowly closing in. Now that I have activated body enhancement spell, my maximum speed and strength should be above his. Furthermore, this time, I have brought life points recovery potions, so this battle can be fought. The Berserk Blade rises to attack again, returning the Angry Waves attack. Their shadows intertwined, and their attacks came and went. How Rand's sword cleaves through the chaos, tempering the heart. The sword and spirit collide, and it is hard to tell who will win. When Blade Runner saw his opponent increase his speed, he was already mentally prepared. Feng Bujue's counterattack was within his expectations. This time, he did not go all out. Instead, he put up a tight defense around himself, and then used some feints that were faster than normal to hold his opponent back. Perhaps due to his years of experience as a professional gamer, Blade Runner had a feeling that Feng Bujue would not be able to maintain his current state for too long. As long as he dragged the battle out, the man would be defeated on his own. Feng Bujue, facing a strong enemy, ignoring the wounds on his body. The more he fights, the braver he becomes. Friend, not bad. Do you want to join our guild? I can introduce you. Blade Runner fought with him for a while, and he had moved into a completely defensive position. As the saying goes, an inch shorter is an inch riskier. At that moment, Feng Bujue's 2 short weapons, the knife and pliers, were as fast as lightning. His movement speed was above his opponent's, and he surrounded Blade Runner and attacked him relentlessly. On the surface, it looked like Feng Bujue had the upper hand, but it was the complete opposite. He was the one who was heading toward defeat. This attack and defense reflected the huge gap between the two of them in terms of combat prowess. Blade Runner did not have the upper hand in terms of speed and strength, but with his advantage in fighting experience and technique, he was undefeatable. Feng Bujue, on the other hand, was rapidly depleting his stamina points and life points in this battle that he could not win. There's no need. I don't want to run into someone like you again, Feng Bujue replied. That could be considered a compliment. Since you know you're going to lose, why are you still holding on? Blade Runner asked again. Feng Bujue did not answer and continued to attack. No one knew what he was planning. His stamina points had been depleted by a third in this short battle, and his life points were even worse. Even though the clothes he was wearing could reduce the effect of bleeding, the loss of life points would not completely stop. The damage that he received from the previous attacks and the body enhancement spell that consumed 2% of his life points every 5 seconds had caused his life points to drop below 30%. Facing an opponent like Blade Runner, Feng Bujue did not dare to be careless. If he waited until his life points dropped to 10% before healing, there was a high chance that he would lose due to a single mistake. Therefore, when his life points reached 30%, he used the first life points recovery potion. You're wasting items. Blade Runner became more and more relaxed as the battle progressed. He was gradually getting familiar with Feng Bujue's attack patterns, so he became more talkative. I don't mind being blunt. Dragging this out will not benefit you. It will only benefit me more. Feng Bujue said, You're quite frank. If that's the case, I don't mind being blunt. He suddenly stopped attacking and jumped back into the battle circle. A wounded body, a battle with no chance of victory. Even if you're unwilling, what can you do? The cold, murderous intent is still there. The blazing attacks have stopped. At this moment, is it the desperate breathing of the loser or the stalemate of the loser? You think dragging this out will benefit you because you're considering the problem from the perspective of the battle. Feng Bujue continued from where he left off. In fact, I also hope that you can take a defensive stance and not rush to decide the victor, because I also need time to think about the answer to the hidden mission. Blade Runner's calm expression disappeared from his face and was replaced by a solemn expression. Laughing at the dark sea, breaking through thousands of armies, I plan the universe and calculate karma. Unaware and fearless of life and death, not a ghost, not a god, but a mad demon. Feng Bujue recited his poem, and then he heard the system announcement. Hidden mission completed. You have obtained a unique sorcery weapon, Death Poker. The sorcery weapon is permanently bound to the player. It cannot be traded, discarded, or destroyed. It does not need to occupy the inventory. It can be generated at any time by consuming 2% of the maximum sorcery points. The weapon's attribute will grow with the player's level. Feng Bujue put away the two weapons that he was holding. With a thought, white light gathered in his hands and quickly morphed into a deck of cards. His sorcery points decreased correspondingly and dropped to 1,47150. He quickly browsed through the item's attribute and then deactivated body enhancement spell. Reciting the poem, gathering the waves of sorcery, the silhouette, the aura is vast. Feng Bujue raised two of his fingers, and there was a piece of paper between his fingers. There was no skill, no attack, and no defense. A ray of light shot out toward the shadow of flashes of sword, and it disappeared. Didn't I say that this kind of long-distance attack is not? The last few words of Blade Runner's sentence were caught in his throat. He saw a poker card fly past his cheek and cut open a wound. What is that? Blade Runner's expression shifted. If not for the fact that he noticed something was wrong and quickly turned his head to the side, the attack would have hit him in the eye. A card, Feng Bujue replied calmly. So, that is the power of the sorcery weapon, Blade Runner said. Looks like this hidden mission is worth doing. Do you think I will let you slowly come up with a poem and then fight you who has obtained the sorcery weapon? Feng Bujue said as he quickly tossed out another two cards. After the poker cards left his hand, they seemed to have a life of their own. They tore through the air and flew at flashes of sword in an impossible arc. Two more streaks of light came at us with great momentum. Blade Runner raised his sword to meet them. His sword aura was as strong as a mountain peak. Huh. Child Jian raised his spiritual source. His sword aura pierced through the white rainbow. His overwhelming power swept out. Two rays of light flew away. Flashes of sword's hand that held the sword was shaking because his sword was shaking. Strange movement, incredible speed, and such powerful force. He knew that things were not looking good. The man had 54 poker cards in his hand. Even though he had managed to dodge one and block two with his sword, based on how things were progressing, it was only a matter of time before he was killed. All right, the greetings end here. Now, I will officially begin my attack, Feng Bujue said. The tables have turned. The arrogant declaration made Blade Runner shocked. TSK. Blade Runner heard the narration. Even though he was not convinced, there was nothing he could say. This was because when Feng Bujue was at a disadvantage, the man did not show any expression of shock. At most, he was mocking Feng Bujue. This time, Feng Bujue pulled out 5 cards and opened them in his hand. Let's try a straight flush first. While Blade Runner hesitated, Feng Bujue made his move. Chapter 110. Name, Death Poker Item Type, Sorcery Weapon Quality, Excellent, Offense Points. Element, Unknown Special Effect 1. Infinite. A depleted card will be created every 5 minutes, and it will stop when there are 54 cards. Special Effect 2. Combo. Attacking with a certain combination of cards will increase the damage. Special Effect 3. Soul Seeker. The sorcery weapon will always fly toward its owner's target. Equip requirement. unlocked sorcery mastery can be taken out of the scenario. Yes, remark. When Gambit was the Knight of the Apocalypse, part of his power gained sentience. He betrayed his master and turned into an unknown force to wander the multiverse. Until one day, he ran into another powerful soul and turned himself into a card to become its loyal and powerful servant. Sorcery weapons were good stuff. As the player's level increased, the weapon's attributes would change and grow as well. The number of special effects would increase, and they might become stronger. As a special weapon that could only be obtained by sorcery mastery, the method to obtain it was hard to come by. This thing could not be bought at the shop, and it was not available in the thriller box. It could only be obtained through special scenarios or hidden missions. In that regard, it was similar to the method of obtaining Grade S mastery. Sorcery weapons were like titles. They were custom-made by the system for the player. If the player's gaming style changed, then the special effects of the sorcery weapon would change as well, but the basic form of the weapon would not change. Therefore, generally speaking, players would have to be at least around level 30 and wait for the dust to settle on their character's main fighting style and game style before they would get this item. However, Feng Bujue and Blade Runner were not normal players. For example, even if Blade Runner reached level 50, he would still use a sword, so there was nothing wrong with giving him a sorcery weapon in the form of a sword. Of course, that was if he could complete the hidden mission. With regards to Feng Bujue, he was an all-rounder. He knew a thing or two about every mastery, and the death poker that he had obtained was suitable for players with different masteries. Its special effects were ever-changing. Feng Bujue, who was only level 15, had a hard time imagining how scary the weapon would be when it was fully activated. Danger! 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 For a time, the sky was overcast and the earth was dark. Gods and ghosts were frightened. Feng Bujue's straight flush spun and intertwined in the air, almost instantly arriving in front of Blade Runner. The speed and power of this attack were much higher than before. Blade Runner made the first move to gain the initiative, determined to break the move first. Drink, oh drink. Blade Runner switched to holding his sword with both hands. He leaned forward and rushed towards the 5 beams of light. He tried to use his sword as a barrier and use his speed to gain space. He wanted to pass through the gaps and get close to Feng Bujue, bringing the battle back into close combat. With a roar, the child Jin circulated his quintessence once more. A vast and vigorous aura spread out from his body, blocking the might of the spiritual light. In the blink of an eye, the wind suddenly whistled through the air. The clouds in the sky surged, and a turbid aura covered the eyes. Light and shadow intertwined. Blade Runner suddenly appeared. His cold and arrogant gaze was even more domineering. A body of courage, a swift sword swearing to slay a strong enemy. Of the 5 cards, 3 were blocked by the sword. 1 was successfully dodged, but there was still one that slashed across Blade Runner's left armpit. Dark red blood suddenly spurted out of the wound, and blood splattered everywhere. However, this did not stop him from advancing. Blade Runner still quickly arrived in front of Feng Bujue. However, Feng Bujue was already prepared. He knew that the 5 cards would not be able to end the battle. His opponent would definitely break through and come close to him. Therefore, he was already prepared for the next move. He instantly activated the body enhancement technique, and the wrench was already in his hand. Dynamic vision, absolute speed, and explosive power were all slightly faster than Feng Bujue. Blade Runner was bleeding just like him. They were in the same situation. The difference was that Child Jian had to get close to his opponent, or else he would have no chance of winning. Feng Bujue, on the other hand, was waiting for an opportunity to attack. Sword aura shakes spiritual energy. Crisscrossing shadows. Colliding divine power. Under the hanging corpse wall, the earth trembles. Feng Bujue had originally wanted to end the battle with a headshot, and he had indeed seized the fleeting opportunity to land a heavy blow on his opponent's head. Unfortunately, Blade Runner actually had a helmet. Although he had hidden this equipment, when he was attacked, the invisible outline would still appear for a second, and it would have the same effect as normal defensive equipment. The victor had not been decided yet. Fong Bujua wanted to widen the distance between them again, but it would not be so easy. Blade Runner continuously attacked with his sword. His movements were like the wind. He was already seriously using his full strength. The gap between a professional top player and a non-combat player like Fong Bujua once again put the latter into a predicament of being suppressed. It was difficult for him to extricate himself from his opponent's continuous sword attacks. Close combat. Every move is ruthless and dangerous. Blood splattered. Drops of blood seeped into the ground and dyed it red. Both of them used their ultimate skills. Spiritual energy sent the enemy to their death. Sword aura cut off all paths of escape. In the end, it was Blade Runner who came out on top. Just as Fong Bujua's life was in danger, suddenly, the world trembled. Thunder rumbled. The clouds shattered. The sky collapsed. In an instant, purple lightning soared into the sky. Hellfire opened the way. In the dark night, a murderous aura came from afar. The development of the situation and the surrounding environment changed according to the narration. Due to this sudden lightning strike and strange fire, the two had to stop fighting and each took a side. For Fong Bujua, it was another narrow escape. They both looked in the direction opposite from the mountain wall and saw a figure slowly walking toward them. Before you is an unbelievable scene. It is a figure that chills one's heart. It is a dead person that will fall forever. It is a ghost that will be reborn from hell. The man was tall and handsome, and he had an extraordinary presence about him. His long black hair reached his waist. Only the two tufts of hair on his forehead were white. He wore a black battle robe with a white satin shirt. On his shoulders was a tiger skin shawl. On his back was a red cape that fluttered in the wind. He held a long halberd in his hand. It was a combination of a dagger and a spear. There was a straight blade at the front of the hilt and a horizontal blade at the side. Fong Bujua recognized it at first glance. It was the holy halberd and heavenly sai. The owner of this weapon was self-explanatory. He was the #1 war god of misery. For some reason, the narration in the script stopped after this person appeared. Not a single word was spoken. Cold wind, who dares to drink with me? Who dares to stand in my way? The halberd returns, but the man does not return. The newcomer sang and walked to the two players. He opened his mouth to say, "You do not belong here." Fong Bujua's heart was pounding. He thought to himself, which era am I in? Yin Gue Rin still hasn't left? But based on the narration, it seems to be a rebirth from the dead. He did not dare to say anything. He just replied calmly, "After the winner is decided, we will leave." Yin Gue Rin looked at him deeply. He did not say anything. Then he turned his head and looked at Blade Runner. "What if I want you to leave now?" "Humph. Then you have to ask the card in my hand." Before Blade Runner could finish, Fong Bujua's poker card flew at him again. But this time Fong Bujua seemed to be going easy on him. He only threw one card. It did not pose any threat. He just wanted to shut him up. If you want to be killed, that's your business. Don't talk nonsense. I don't want to be enemies with any NPC in this world. Even if I have 10 lives, it will not be enough, Fong Bujua said. Fong Bujua, don't worry. I will not be enemies with you. This is their intention, Yin Gue Rin said. Huh? Fong Bujua was stunned when he heard that. Fong Bujua had the same pronunciation, so he had no idea which name the man had called him. But in the previous scenario, Rainsford had called him Fong Bujua by his ID, and he said that it was Sam Montier who asked him to greet him. This meant that the NPCs in these scenarios could see the player's ID at any time. The question now was, Yin Gue Rin's words seemed to be implying something. What did he mean? What have you done? Flashes of Sword's face was filled with confusion. From the sound of it, this uninvited guest who suddenly appeared before him was in cahoots with the enemy? He could not help but think, did the kid accept a quest that I did not have? Impossible. I have been fighting with him from the beginning to the end. In addition to the main mission of killing the other party and the hidden mission of the poem of creation taking the psionic weapon, if he triggers any other mission, I should also trigger it. Fong Bujua wanted to say, I am also confused. But the next second, there was a flash of white light. When he recovered, he was already standing in the login lobby. What is the meaning of this? Have I been teleported? He clicked on the screen to look at the notification. It said, Scenario failed. You were killed by an NPC. There is no reward for the loser of the killing game. Phone Bujue opened his social tab, found Blade Runner's ID, and sent him a friend request. About 10 seconds later, the other party accepted. Phone Bujue sent a call request. Once the connection was established, he did not waste any time and asked directly, Did you win? The other party was obviously stunned. After several seconds, he replied, Were you teleported as well? Yes, Phone Bujue said. The system said that I was killed by an NPC. Blade Runner said, That's strange. Me too. He said, thoughtfully, Could the guy with the halberd be an illusion-type boss? Did he use some kind of instant death skill on us? I don't think so, Phone Bujue said. If he wanted to kill us, he could have done it in 3 seconds. You mean to say that we've run into some kind of game bug? Flashes of Sword asked. After a pause, he added, I say, Brother Phone, you added me as a friend just to ask me this? Is there something else? Flashes of Sword laughed. We can fight one more time to decide the victor. With a beep, Phone Bujue decisively ended the call. Chapter 111. Seeing the two players disappear into white light, Yin Gairen's expression shifted. Suddenly, he turned around and looked at the spot that was supposed to be empty. A few meters away, there was a figure standing there. The man was wearing a black suit, his hair was brown, his face was handsome, his eyes sharp, and his body radiated a wild presence. War God of Hell, we meet again, Yin Gairen said. Simon replied, You shouldn't have appeared before them. It was you who sent them away? Yin Gairen asked. Simon didn't answer his question. He just said what he wanted to say. Whether you did it intentionally or not, as long as I find out that you're trying to reveal anything that they shouldn't know, then they won't be the only ones who have to leave. Your real body is in a different world that is even higher than heaven. Yin Gairen turned around to avoid eye contact. You are just like them. You are just a projection. Even someone like you wants to fight with me? Stupid question. Simon's attitude was always condescending. My shadow will not be weaker than the projection that was born with the help of the Saint Demon embryo. Is that so? Yin Gairen was fearless as he turned around. The two were ready to fight. The battle between the war god of misery and the number one of hell was about to start. Hee, calm down. A burst of creepy laughter cut in. Another man in a black suit appeared between the two. Woody pushed up his glowing glasses and said with a smile, Warrior Yin, you have to understand, we are on official business. Yin Gairen saw Woody appear and stopped talking. He turned to leave silently, as if he did not want to say anything more. After he left, Woody continued with a smile. Simon, you're the judge. You can't just come here because you want to fight with someone stronger. It was you who allowed Phone Bujue to come to this world at such a low level. Simon cut him off. Or the system that you built is getting harder and harder to control. Ayaya. Haha. It seems like no matter what I say, it's my fault. Woody's answer was equivalent to not answering. You want the person that you have chosen to get the sorcery weapon earlier than the one that Vincent has placed his bet on, right? Simon did not wait for Woody's answer. He scoffed. Humph, you sure know how to play tricks. Since you've seen through me, I don't have to explain anything. Woody shrugged. Thank you for coming here. If I find out about your little tricks again, I'll kill you just like how I deal with the other small fries, Simon said. He never joked. Thank you for showing mercy. Woody smiled. By the way, the kid that you have your eyes on, Phantom Dawn, is currently competing with several experts in the killing game. Even though you are the judge and have not placed any bets, but do you want to go take a look? No need. Simon squinted at Woody and said without looking back, a battle of this level can't even be considered cricket fighting. At the same time, in another killing game scenario, in the ruins of a city, a fierce battle had started. The two parties involved were the strongest fighting force in Thriller Paradise. On the side of the 3v3 were 3 of the 4 heavenly kings of Brahma, Vishnu, Brahma, and Yamaraja. They were ranked 3rd to 5th on the player's individual combat ranking. On the other side were three from regulation. They were Fearless Champion, who was ranked 8th on the combat ranking, Meng Jingchan, who was ranked 9th, and the strongest player at the top, Phantom Dawn. The three for Brahma were all level 26. They wore the same uniform, and the style was similar to the military uniform of a major. The main color was dark blue and dark gray. The badge of Brahma appeared on the outside of their left arm. The symbol looked like a solar eclipse, and the word Brahma floated in gold before the symbol. Vishnu looked like a man in his 20s. He had short black hair, average height, well-proportioned muscles, and good looks. His title was Nine-Faced Phantom Armor. Brahma looked several years older than him. His hair was down, and he had stubble on his chin. His body was similar to Long Aomeen's, and his title was Sun and Moon Snatcher. The one with the nickname Yama was a female player. She was about the same age as her teammates. She had a slender figure, and her hair reached her neck. Blue bangs fell before her forehead, covering half of her face. The half of her face that was exposed was as fair as jade. Her facial features were beautiful, and her title was Xing Suo. On regulation's side, their badge was a white scale against a sea blue background, and their uniform was a white coat that was draped over their shoulders. The rest of the outfit could be matched freely. This white coat was a rather unique outfit. When it was purchased, it had the traditional Chinese word justice written on the back. After purchasing it, the player could change the word once, and, at most, it could be changed to 4 words. Moreover, this costume did not occupy the top column, but was counted as an accessory because it could only be draped over and could not be worn. Of course, this outfit was very expensive. It cost 500,000 game coins, and it was almost as expensive as a set. However, it still sold well. First, each member of regulation had one, and they would change the word justice on the back to regulation as their uniform. Secondly, there were a lot of players, obviously they were all men, who wanted to look cool. They didn't hesitate to wear a beginner's uniform and put a white coat on their back. Then, they changed the word to something like, I, the unique and righteous, which made others not know whether to laugh or cry. Back to the 3 members of regulation, Brave One was fearless. He wore a white suit pants under the coat. He had a handsome appearance, and he had short hair. His title was Spear Hero. Even though he was the first player to reach level 20 during the closed beta, during the open beta, the mission given to him by the studio was not to level up. Therefore, he was currently the same level as the other 3, 26. It was worth mentioning that, after 1 day of open beta, his ranking on the combat ability ranking had dropped from 6th to 8th. Meng Jingchan, 25 years old. He was neither fat nor skinny. He had a simple and honest face. His hair was fluffy and parted in a 3 to 7 split. He was level 21, and his title was Cold Killer. He was one of the main players who joined Regulation during the open beta. Jiang, who had Laughing Blade, and Regulation had a similar group called Drunken Dream. Meng Jingchan was one of them. His level could be said to reflect the strength of Regulation's intelligence foundation. With the support of equipment, financial resources, and information, the top players of Regulation only needed 24 hours in real life to catch up with the 48 hours gap in the closed beta. However, other than the cloak given by the club, Meng Jingchan was only wearing the beginner's outfit. It gave people the feeling that this guy was very short on game coins. At the same time, he was holding some unnecessary consumables in his hands, similar to the potato chips that Xiao Tan bought for the players. He also had a cigarette in his right hand and a bottle of beer in his left. At this point, it should be clear to everyone that Meng Jingchan had 3 hobbies: smoking, drinking, and perming his hair. There was a song to prove it: to be a god, to ride a crane, to turn stone into gold, to perming hair, to drink, to smoke. Lastly, there was Phantom Dawn. He was the youngest star player since Regulation was formed, and he could be said to be a combat genius. In this world, everyone had something they were good at, but not everyone had the chance to show off their strength. This was a matter of luck. Take Feng Bujue as an example. If he was born in the Republic of China, perhaps he would have been able to get into the Ministry of Education. At the very least, he would have been able to become a writer for a newspaper. He would have been able to write cynical articles and make some shocking public statements, criticizing the government and the public, but he would not have had to worry about food and clothing. He would have had at least 2 wives. One would have been a lady from a rich family, and the other would have been his student, the kind who was at least 10 years younger than him. Of course, these were all hypotheses. Unfortunately, Fong Bujue had been born in an era where the law was perfect, society was harmonious, and culture was improving, so he could only write novels to earn money. The same logic applied to Phantom Dawn. If he had been born in a world of swords and magic, or a world of magic and fighting spirit, he would have been a master with a bright future ahead of him. Unfortunately, he had been born on Earth, and he had been born into a very peaceful era. Therefore, it was better to leave the fighting and killing to the virtual reality game. Phantom Dawn was currently level 22. Even though he had been ordered off from work by his team leader on the second night of the closed beta, the server had been shut down the next morning, so he had not lost that much game time. When the open beta started, he had been level 15, and now 20 hours had passed in real life, so it was only natural that he had reached this level. In reality, as a professional player and a star player of regulation, Phantom Dawn's leveling speed could be considered slacking. Even Meng Jingchan, who had only been level 1 when the open beta started, was already level 21, and he was only level 22. But even though his level was 4 levels lower than the other 3, Phantom Dawn was still at the top of the player combat ranking. This explained many things. In the game, he had set his hairstyle to fiery red long hair. Under his white coat, he wore a black camouflage uniform. His body was thin and weak, and he wasn't very tall. Looking at his body shape, he was no different from an average youth who wasn't even 20 years old. However, the system had determined that in terms of pure combat ability, he was the strongest player, and it had given him an unforgettable title, Fear Spreader. Chapter 112. 5 of the 6 fought back and forth in the ruins, flicking their flying swords as they walked. The fight lasted for more than 10 minutes. Fearless Champion and Meng Jingchan were at a disadvantage to begin with, and they were fighting 2 against 3. Naturally, they were at a disadvantage. Phantom Dawn merely watched from afar like what was happening had nothing to do with him. This was not an invitation, but an encounter. The 2 teams were evenly matched, and that was why they ran into each other. Even though Phantom Dawn did not make his move, the 3 from Brahmin did not dare let their guard down. This was the first time they had encountered this young man who was ranked first on the combat ranking. They had no idea how powerful he was, and they could not rule out the possibility that he was preparing some kind of skill. Therefore, they kept their guard up. However, the 3 of them did not plan to attack Phantom Dawn before the battle ended. What if the kid was just watching from the sidelines because he looked down on them or did not get along with his teammates? In that case, they would just let him do it. Now that it was 3 against 2, the advantage was obvious. After killing the other 2, it would become 3 against 1. At that time, no matter how strong he was, he would have no chance of winning against 3 of the top powerhouses on the combat strength list. Phantom Dawn yawned. He looked at the battle and mumbled to himself, "This is so boring." At that moment, Fearless Champion was caught by Yama, and it added a new twist to this boring battle. From Yama's title, Xing Sua, one could guess that she was using a whip. At that moment, she flickered, and the whip lashed out like a snake. The brave warrior was fearless. He had just faced Vishnu's attack head-on, and had not yet stabilized his footing. He was caught off guard, and the long whip arrived and coiled around his neck. Yama twisted her wrist and yanked. She wanted to use this opportunity to snap Phantom Dawn's neck. In the blink of an eye, Meng Jingchan arrived. He flicked his sword at the whip, and a wave of energy shot out to temporarily block the power that Yama channeled into the whip. Fearless Champion used this opportunity to flip away and shake the whip off his neck. In that split second, one could see how high Meng Jingchan's combat level was. When he saw that the hero was not afraid of being ambushed, he did not hesitate and immediately sped up. With a feint, he forced back Great Brahma, who was fighting with him, and turned around to save his teammate. Great Brahma was the slowest among the 3 of them, and he was completely shaken off by Meng Jingchan's simple move. There was nothing he could do. TSK. Fearless champion touched the burning mark on his neck. He could not hold it in any longer. Kid, he yelled at Phantom Dawn. How long are you planning to watch this show? If you can't hold on any longer, just say so. You're asking me how long it'll take? Huh. Phantom Dawn stood up lazily. Your mission, in this case, the mission given by regulation, is to raise your fighting mastery as soon as possible and gain skill points from the battle. He stretched his neck left and right. Even if you're killed, it won't affect you from doing these two things. Therefore, if I don't move, you'll be able to do these two things. Meng Jingchan and Fearless Champion had already jumped out from the group and came to Phantom Dawn's side. When the three from Brahma saw that the kid had finally made his move, they readied themselves to face the challenge from the strongest player. The reason they were so wary of Phantom Dawn was because of another person, the second place on the combat ranking, Shiva. As the strongest of Brahma's 4 heavenly kings, he used the in-game ID that represented the god of destruction and was also the leader of Brahma. In terms of 1v1, Vishnu, Great Brahma, and Yamaraja had not beaten him, not even once. When the members of Brahma saw the ranking in the market for the first time, they were completely shocked. A person whose name could not be seen on the level ranking was ranked higher than their leader on the combat ranking. They would have believed it if someone said that the kid had cheated or had some kind of supernatural power. Kid, based on what you've said, if you move, your teammates won't even need to move? Vishnu asked. Actually, if not for Uncle Fearless pulling down the average combat power of the team, perhaps I would have won without moving. In real life, Phantom Dawn was an easygoing and polite young man. But once he entered the game, he would turn into a maniac. What are you talking about? Fearless Champion was so angry that he almost jumped out of his seat. He had been annoyed by Phantom Dawn for a long time. During the closed beta, since he had maxed out his level, he had been given free time to play. He had arranged for a random battle between 3 to 6 people. When he went in to take a look, he saw that the 3 people he met were all from the studio. 2 of them were even his sidekicks. He immediately made up his mind and planned for everyone to have a tacit understanding to farm each other's mastery levels and then let him win in the end. Who would have thought that Phantom Dawn would taunt them by saying that he wanted to fight 3 people at once? At the time, Phantom Dawn had only been level 15, but he had been so arrogant. Naturally, the seniors had wanted to teach him a lesson. Therefore, a tragedy had happened. Of course, while he was annoyed, it was just a temporary emotion. Fearless Champion was not going to hold a grudge over a game. He just thought that the kid was a bit annoying. To his surprise, on the night of the open beta, during the assignment, he was really assigned to the same team as Phantom Dawn and Meng Jingchan. His mission was to play a 3v3 killing game and train his mastery for the whole night. Now that he'd been scolded by Phantom Dawn in front of his biggest competitor, even Buddha would be angry. Don't be angry. That's how kids talk. Meng Jingchan consoled him. He spoke slowly, and the expression on his face was like that of an old man who was daydreaming. This was completely different from his usual fast and agile fighting style. I might look like this now, but I was just like him when I was young. He took out the bottle and took 2 big gulps. Then he burped. Burp. I was just as reckless back then. What do you mean by now? What are you doing now? It's just smoking, drinking, and perming your hair. Fearless Champion yelled. Also, you're only a few years older than him. You're still young, right? Fine. Since I'm standing up now, let's finish this battle quickly. Phantom Dawn cracked his knuckles and walked forward. Tomorrow, I'll go and make the request. In the future, no matter the mode, we'll all solo. It'll be hard for you guys to queue with me. Seeing the man walk forward alone, Brahma replied with a chuckle. Hey, kid, you're not so naive as to think that you can defeat the 3 of us alone, are you? Interesting. Even the leader wouldn't be able to do something like that. What do you think, Yama? Vishnu turned to ask. Humph, you're asking for it. Yama scoffed. However, the expression on Phantom Dawn's face was so relaxed that it bordered on laziness. Think what you will. He did not even have a weapon. He extended his hand and made a pleased gesture. He flipped his palm toward himself. Stop wasting time. Come at me together. Chapter 113. The so-called reality may just be an illusion that we can't control and depicted by others. Phone Bujue, level 15. Please select the game mode that you wish to join. You have selected single-player survival mode, Nightmare. Please confirm. Confirmed. Generating scenario. Downloading. Please wait a moment. Welcome to Thriller Paradise. A young woman's voice drifted into his ears. Since the previous 1v1 scenario did not take up much time, and Xiao Tan's team scenario was not over yet, Phone Bujue queued for a new mode that was only unlocked at level 15, the single-player survival mode on Nightmare difficulty. Download complete. You are currently playing single-player survival mode, Nightmare. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there is a chance of triggering hidden side missions and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario. Randomly draw 2 puzzle cards. The scenario introduction will be played soon. The game will start immediately after that. A normal street appeared before Phone Bujue's eyes, and on both sides of the street were the walls of residential houses. The sky was hazy, and there were no tall buildings in sight. The taller buildings were only 6 or 7 stories tall. This looked like a small town. It was worth noting that the opening cinematic was in black and white. The system audio said, "This is a normal evening, and you're on your way home. The small town that you live in was hit by a typhoon not long ago. Your original address was the worst affected, and most of the houses around it collapsed. Even though you survived, you have to find another place to stay. You have been temporarily placed in an abandoned house in the small town. It is an old longhouse at Sanding Village. According to legend, the place is haunted by ghosts, so no one dares to get close. However, after the typhoon, you and the other 2 affected families were forced to move in and live next to each other." The scenario introduction ended there, and Phone Bujue could move freely. Almost at the same time, he heard the system audio. Main quest has been triggered. Opening the game menu, the quest tab showed the content of the main quest. The quest was as simple as it could get. It only had 2 words, "Go home." So this is a haunted scenario. Phone Bujue mumbled. There doesn't seem to be a time limit. This nightmare scenario is not as scary as Saw. He started to check his pockets to see if he had anything like an ID or a map. As he searched, Phone Bujue observed his surroundings. Strangely enough, after the cinematic ended, the world was still in black and white. It was as if he had become colorblind. Moreover, he could faintly hear a kind of fragmentary sound. It was very soft, and he didn't know where it came from. Every time he tried to listen with rapt attention, the sound would disappear, but to no avail, it would return. 10 seconds later, Phone Bujue searched through all the pockets, and he found a ring of keys inside the right pocket of his pants. There were 3 keys in total. Item name, 3 keys item type, plot item quality, normal function. Unlocked doors can be taken out of the scenario. No remark. You can use them once you find the corresponding door lock. Phone Bujue picked up the keys and studied them. Judging from their appearance, these 3 keys looked very ordinary. Judging from the serrations and patterns, the corresponding lock was not complicated either. Assuming one of them is the key to the house, what are the other 2? Phone Bujue wondered. Based on the shape of the street lamp and the trash can, this should be from the 20th century. Car keys from that time shouldn't have been folded and electronic, so they should be traditional keys like this. He walked to the junction and looked down the road. There doesn't appear to be a parking lot nearby, so even if one of them is the car key, the car is not around here. He scratched his head. There seems to be too little information. Am I playing the game as a player, or am I playing the role of me? If it's the latter, is my identity important? Will it affect the plot? What will happen after I return home? Based on the current situation, these questions were unsolvable. Phone Bujue decided to follow the main quest. After all, this was nightmare difficulty. It looked peaceful on the surface, but one wrong step and he might die. Even if there was no time limit, it was dangerous to wander around the small town recklessly. Speaking of which, even though I was given the address of Sanchami's old longhouse, where's Sanchami? Phone Bujue naturally did not know the way to the small town, so knowing the address was pointless. Since I'm walking on a road home, then the direction I was originally facing. Feng Bujue turned to look in that direction, but it was a junction. I should look for a map or ask someone. He did not want to try his luck. The reason was self-explanatory. At this point, a pedestrian slowly walked over. It was a woman with long black hair. She was wearing a trench coat, long pants, and a scarf around her neck. She also wore a mask that covered the lower half of her face. Feng Bujue had been standing on the street for so long, and this was the first person he saw. But since it was a small town, it was understandable that there were few people on the street at night. "I'm sorry, may I ask?" Feng Bujue leaned forward to ask for directions. However, before he could finish his sentence, the woman interrupted him. "Am I pretty? What?" Feng Bujue immediately felt something was wrong. His hand instinctively reached into his backpack. "Am I pretty?" The woman turned around and asked again. However, half of her face was covered by a mask and scarf, so it was not visible at all. "Yes, you are," Feng Bujue finally reacted. This woman before him was probably the legendary. Hearing that, the woman with the cleft mouth immediately removed the mask to reveal her whole face. Both sides of her cheeks were split open by 2 slashes, which almost reached the roots of her ears. "Am I still pretty?" she asked again. Feng Bujue was thankful that he did not learn how to look like a clown, or else he would be a perfect match with this woman. Looking at this monster that could make children cry, Feng Bujue widened his eyes and answered with certainty, "Yes, pretty." His hand that was holding the wrench was ready to pull. He thought to himself, "Be Aster's start, I've already praised you twice. If you still dare to pull out the scythe, don't blame me for giving you a second plastic surgery." After a few seconds, the woman with the cleft mouth asked again, "What did you want to ask me earlier?" Feng Bujue was hesitant about asking her. After all, who would be willing to reveal their address to a monster? But then he thought about it. After all, he did not really live there. So he asked, "How do I get to Sanchome?" "That way, turn left again at the next street, and walk straight." The woman with the cleft mouth pointed at the intersection. After she said that, she put on the mask and scarf and left. Feng Bujue did not plan to chase after her to thank her. He watched as she disappeared from his sight. Then he sighed in relief and let go of the wrench. F***CK. I haven't even reached home, and I've already run into a monster. Then I'll definitely run into a ghost when I get home. Even though that was what he thought, since he was playing a horror game. He had to go home even though he knew it was haunted. Feng Bujue followed the route given by the woman with the cleft mouth. The sky was darkening, and everything was black and white. The atmosphere was eerie. If this was any other player, just standing on the empty street would be enough to make their hair stand on end. A gust of cold wind blew, and Feng Bujue pulled his suit jacket tighter around himself. Then, a white streak cut across the dark sky, and a ghastly flash lit up the sky. Several seconds after the flash, thunder rumbled. Not only was there wind, it was going to rain soon. When Feng Bujue lifted his head to look, he happened to see something strange high up in the sky. At the top of the power line, at the blind spot of the streetlight, there was a humanoid shadow squatting there. When the lightning lit up this black and white world, Feng Bujue got a good look at it. The monster looked like an old woman in a white kimono. Her hair was tied into a bun behind her head, and her face was covered in wrinkles. Her eyes bulged, and they almost popped out of their sockets. The skin on her hands was dark and wrinkled, and her fingers were open like ghost claws. When the lightning stopped, the shadow disappeared into the darkness again. Feng Bujue could not see it anymore, and he had no interest in getting closer to see what the monster was. As long as it did not jump toward him, he would pretend that he did not see it. Feng Bujue lowered his head and continued to move forward. He picked up his pace again, and he was almost running now. He did not see any other passers-by, and he only stopped when he reached a street sign. It was at this time that the rain started to fall. The rain poured down on Feng Bujue. He quickly found his destination. Looking down the street, he could see in a courtyard a row of 3 long, simple houses joined together. That must be the place. Feng Bujue hurried to the house. He pushed the wet hair on his forehead back and took out the key. According to the scenario, there were 3 families living in this row of houses, and he had two neighbors. Feng Bujue did not know which door he was living in, so he tried them one by one. Perhaps it was luck, but before the first door, he succeeded when he tried the first key. Pushing open the wooden door, the room was dark, and it gave off the unique smell of damp wood. Feng Bujue reached out to feel around the door and found the light switch. He flipped it, and the lights in the room came on. Chapter 114. A house with only 4 walls. Feng Bujue walked into the house. The house was indeed old. It was made of bricks and wood, and the pillars were all made of wood. The 4 walls were filled with cracks, and some places were filled with cement. It looked like it had been done recently. There was only one window in the house. It was about 1 meter wide, and it was the kind with a fence instead of a glass window. There was a simple crossbar above the fence, and the curtains were hung on it. If the wind were blowing from the window into the room, the rain would certainly be rushing in through the wooden fence. The house was divided into 2 rooms. There was a door frame in the middle, but there was no door panel. The room after entering the house could be considered the living room. It was about 10 square meters in size. The floor was made of wood, and there was a chest-high cupboard against the wall. There was a round table in the middle of the room, and there were 3 tatami mats next to it. The ceiling was low, and there was a light bulb hanging from a wire in the middle. It was glowing. Feng Bujue walked to the room next door and poked his head in to take a look. The room was even narrower than the living room. There was a mattress on the ground that took up half of the space, and there was a wardrobe next to the door frame. There was no light in this room. In other words, when the people who lived here wanted to go to bed, they had to come to the living room outside, turn off the light, and then find their way to the mattress in the dark. Of course, there was no furniture in this room. Theoretically, there was no need to worry about bumping into anything. This is too arrogant. Feng Bujue closed the door and said to himself, "There is only electricity and no water. The toilets are all public." When he was outside the house, he had already noticed that in the courtyard outside the row of houses, there was a silhouette that looked like a phone booth. He guessed that it was a simple toilet. Current mission completed. Main mission updated. Before he could sit down, the system notification rang. Feng Bujue opened the menu and saw that there was a tick next to the Go Home mission, and the new mission was Stay in the house until dawn. Feng Bujue looked unhappy. "I have to stay for the whole night." Outside the house, a storm was raging, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. Although the curtains were drawn, gusts of cold wind still came in through the window bars. There were shadows behind the curtains. It was hard to tell if it was the shadows of the branches moving in the wind or if there was something lingering outside. Although there was electricity in the house, the only thing that used electricity was a light bulb. There wasn't even a radio, let alone a television. Even if Feng Bujue wasn't tortured by fear, he would be tortured by boredom. And here I thought the difficulty of a nightmare mode would increase the difficulty of the battle. Feng Bujue walked to the cupboard in the living room. So this is the setting. He pulled open the cupboard and looked inside. There was a thermos, 2 teacups, and a teapot. They were all placed on a circular wooden tray. Because everything was black and white, Feng Bujue could not tell the color of these things. He tried to pick them up, but the thermos was almost full. So he took them all out and placed them on a low table. Then he returned to the cupboard and found a small tube that contained tea leaves on the top shelf. The tube had the word tea written on it, but there was no other name, variety, or production date. Even though this is a temporary shelter, can we really live like this? Feng Bujue wondered. There is even no running water. If we want to use the toilet, we have to go outside. If we want to take a bath, we have to go to the public bathhouse. There is even no utensils to eat with, but even if there is no way to wash the dishes in this house. He used the water from the thermos to wash the teapot and the cups before splashing the water away. Then he opened the tube that contained the tea leaves, grabbed a handful, and poured it into the teapot. He brewed an unknown beverage and poured himself a cup. Since he couldn't change the equipment in the attire in the scenario, in other words, he couldn't take off his clothes. Therefore, Feng Bujue could only try his best to wring the water off his clothes. Then he wore the wet clothes and waited for them to dry naturally. He brewed a pot of hot tea and held it in his hands. At the very least, It helped to alleviate the chill that had enveloped his body, greatly reducing the amount of information and clues given and setting up many death flags, as well as making an issue out of the scariest part of the game. This should be the theme of nightmare difficulty, Fong Bujue said to himself. Some seemingly unintentional choices might lead to a fatal disaster. Thinking back to what he had just experienced, it dawned on him. If I had said something wrong or shown fear, the woman with the cleft mouth would have killed me instantly, and the monster on the utility pole would have been the same. He raised his head to look out the window, and it was still pouring rain. It looks like there is no time or space restriction, but if I really ignore the main quest and go out to explore, I might trigger some random trigger that might kill me. Based on the worldview of this scenario, one has to have powerful sorcery to gain a certain degree of freedom, or else it's hard to say what will happen. Taking another sip of the hot tea, he mumbled, "Just follow the main quest. At most, I'll be scared continuously, but I won't be in a desperate situation in terms of combat." He put down the cup. But this is so boring. Am I supposed to sleep inside the scenario? By the way, is there not even a newspaper in this house? Oh, suddenly, there was a strange groan. Woo! Air! Then there were two more groans. They dragged on, and it sounded like the voice of an old witch. The sound came from the wall, the room of the neighbor. What the hell is going on? Fong Bujue turned his face toward the wall. It's raining so heavily. Is there some kind of sorcerer inside the house? Fong Bujue thought about it. This should be part of the main quest, so he should do something about it. "Hey, you over there, are you all right?" He yelled at the wall. Then, the voice stopped abruptly. What the hell? Did she die? Fong Bujue had been sitting on the floor with his legs crossed, but when the sound stopped, he used his hands and knees to move as quietly as he could to the wall. He perked up his ears and leaned against the wall to listen. Creak! It was the sound of the door, and then there were footsteps. It sounded like the neighbor had opened the door and left the house. Don't tell me she's coming to knock on my door. Fong Bujue moved to his own door, but all he could hear was the sound of rain and wind outside. He waited for a while, but the person did not knock. It did not sound like she had come to his door. In any case, Fong Bujue was not afraid, so he planned to open the door to see what was going on with this neighbor. He stood up, held the wrench in one hand, and slowly turned the doorknob with the other. He opened the door a sliver and peeked out from inside. Chapter 115. Half of an old, pale face appeared outside the gap. The old woman's bloodshot eyes looked black in this black and white world, and she stared at Fong Bujue. The door had not fully opened, so Fong Bujue had two choices. 1. Pull the door open and use the wrench to greet the woman. 2. Wait and think, did I disturb you? The woman spoke. Fong Bujue did not answer the question directly, but asked probingly, I'm sorry, but are you not feeling well? I heard screaming. It's an old illness. I'm so sorry if I've caused you any trouble. You're too kind. I didn't understand the situation. I'm so sorry, Fong Bujue replied. When the old woman heard that, she turned to look at Fong Bujue again before turning around and slowly walking back in her room. Fong Bujue closed the door and mumbled to himself. Is this woman a human or a ghost? He walked toward the tatami mats. If she's a human, then she's a patient with severe rheumatism. But if she's a ghost... He sat down with his legs crossed and picked up the teapot on the table to pour himself another cup of tea. Then, since I entered this scenario, I haven't run into a single person. All I've seen are ghosts and monsters. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Another sound came from above him. What is it this time? Fong Bujue raised his head to look at the beam under the ceiling. The sound came from above. Suddenly, the light bulb above his head flickered twice, and the next second, the wire that held the light bulb snapped. The light bulb naturally went out and shattered on the ground. The room was plunged into darkness, and there was a flash of lightning outside the window. It seeped through the bars and curtains, leaving behind a strange shadow on the ground. 2 seconds later, another light source came on. Fong Bujue calmly took out the flashlight, switched it on, and shone it upward. He mumbled, Please, it has to be a rat. Unfortunately, it was not a rat. From the time the lights in the room went out to when Feng Bujue turned on the flashlight, only a few seconds had passed. But at this moment, what was hanging from the beam was no longer a light bulb, but a dead body. It was a female corpse dressed like a housewife. She looked very young, less than 30 years old. Her face was twisted and her eyes were rolled back. Her mouth was half open, and there were traces of saliva dripping from the corner of her mouth. The corpse's face was facing Feng Bujue, as if it was looking down at him. In that kind of atmosphere, even if the female body suddenly moved to attack Feng Bujue, it would not be that surprising. But what happened next was beyond Feng Bujue's expectations. He suddenly lost control of his body and returned to the state he was in when he was watching the opening cinematic. The scenery before his eyes started to change on its own. Then, the scene in Feng Bujue's eyes changed from a dilapidated house to a foggy street, and he was standing on the sidewalk. What was even more inexplicable was that the system's voice suddenly rang out again. This is an afternoon in November. You're preparing to visit a good friend in town alone. What's going on? Is it going to be another script introduction? This was the first time that Feng Bujue had encountered something like this, but he still listened carefully and recorded every single word that came out of the system. 1 hour ago, the sky was still clear. The sun was shining brightly, and there was not a single cloud in the blue sky. But an unexpected fog descended without warning, and your surroundings were shrouded in an unknown darkness. Fear surrounded you, and your will was on the verge of collapse. You ran madly, trying to escape from a threat that did not exist. In the end, you lost your way in the fog. Your mind was a mess, and your memory became blurry. You had no idea whether everything around you was real or just an illusion. You had no idea whether you could reach your destination. After that, Feng Bujue regained his mobility, and he was given a new mission. Main quest triggered. Find your good friend's address and reach it. No way. 2 main quests. Feng Bujue did see another main quest in the game menu. The previous quest, stay in the house until dawn, was still there, and it was not ticked, but now there was a new quest that had been added to it. What is with the dead body from before? How did I get here? How many characters do I have to play in this scenario? Feng Bujue wondered. Or, I'm still inside that house, and I'm just seeing an illusion of death? This nightmare mode scenario confused him more and more. The main quest only told him what to do next, but it did not reveal any information related to the final goal of the scenario. Feng Bujue had no clue about this plot, and he was led by the nose. The thick fog rolled heavily, and it slowly circled around him. There was no wind, and it felt like the fog was moving according to its own will. As usual, Feng Bujue checked his body to see if he had any extra plot items. He realized that the ring of keys had disappeared, and inside his suit pocket, there was an extra piece of paper. He took it out to look, and it said, Roca Banco number 4 to 5. F***CK. Again, Feng Bujue groaned. This time, there were shadows around him. In the fog, the shadows appeared, disappeared, reappeared, and disappeared again. This proved that he was not alone. Feng Bujue could hear the footsteps of these shadows. They seemed to be moving around him, maintaining a certain distance, and none of them dared to get close. Click, 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 click. The annoying sound was still there. It was very soft and very far away. It was barely there, but when he listened to it closely, it disappeared again. Feng Bujue moved forward cautiously, dragging his feet as he walked through the suffocating darkness. Occasionally, there would be cars driving past him. With such low visibility, in a small town like this, the cars naturally drove very slowly. Like a slowly creeping behemoth, the blurry shadows approached from afar, suddenly appearing and disappearing. Although the strange and dark environment enveloped Feng Bujue, he did not immerse himself in this atmosphere. He still observed and analyzed everything around him with vigilance. The cold and damp air spread in this sea of darkness, and the occasional car lights that passed by could not bring much light. Feng Bujue tried to use the flashlight to illuminate the area, but the light could not penetrate the thick fog in front of him. The visibility was less than 3 meters. He could not even see the road clearly, let alone find an unfamiliar address in a strange town. After walking for a while, he saw a street lamp not far away. The pole was solid and straight. It gave off a weak, flickering light. Fong Bujua held onto the railing and quickly approached it. There was a bus stop next to the street lamp. Fong Bujua quickly approached to see if there was a map of the town. The result was reassuring. There was indeed a map there. Fong Bujua soon found the location of the bus stop and the location of Rocabanco. Based on the scale of the map, it was only about 2 kilometers away on foot. With his speed, it would take him at most 20 minutes. Things were much easier now that he knew the route. Fong Bujua had a good memory, and he would not get lost after looking at the map once. Just in case, he memorized the names of all the roads around his route to prevent himself from getting lost. Then he set off. After walking for a few minutes, he was reminded of something else. What would happen if he used a strategic victory? So far, this scenario did not look like it had a final boss. Instead, it was made up of a bunch of random monsters, and the plot was confusing and weird. But if all this was an illusion created by an individual, such as an evil spirit or a monster, then he might be able to obtain some breakthrough clues by using his skill. After all, the skill did not cost anything, so it would be a waste not to use it. With that thought in mind, Fong Bujua activated it. Who knew that the next second, his own face would flash before his eyes? It was a face that was at a loss, frightened, and had a pair of eyes that were wide open, but there was not the slightest hint of life in them. There was no information in the menu, and all that came was a severe headache. Imagine the pain of a hammer hitting your finger in your head. What the hell? Fong Bujua held his forehead. What was that? What is with this scenario? Is it because my skill is ineffective in nightmare mode? Just like everything else in the scenario, he could not get an answer. Everything was mysterious, unknown, and chilling. Fong Bujua walked for about 30 minutes. The actual distance was slightly different from his estimation, and he was moving in this strange fog, so it was inevitable that it would affect his speed. However, he eventually reached his destination. It was a Western-style manor house. There was a small garden outside, and flowers were blooming in the garden. However, there was no fragrance in the damp fog. The iron gate outside the garden was not locked, and it opened easily. Fong Bujua walked through the garden and came to the manor house. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. He waited for a while, but there was still no answer. Fong Bujua tried to turn the doorknob, and the door opened. He pushed the door open and entered the dark foyer. Although the room was fully furnished, it still gave people the feeling that it was very spacious. Current quest completed. Main quest updated. Explore the manor house. A flickering light came from the second-floor corridor. With such an obvious guide, Fong Bujua naturally accepted it. He walked up the stairs to the second floor. His footsteps were firm, and his breathing was steady. However, with every step, the wooden boards that he stepped on creaked noisily. It was very jarring. After reaching the second floor, the light disappeared. However, Fong Bujua still had a flashlight in his hand. There was a corner in front of him. He walked quickly to the first door facing him and pushed it open without hesitation. The moment he opened the door, a strange smell entered Fong Bujua's nose. It was a very strong smell, a mixture of perfume and blood. In the room, there was a huge double bed. A woman was lying on the bed, or rather, a female corpse. Although she was naked, her body had completely festered, and her blood had stained the entire bed red. Her eyes were open, and her face was facing the door. Her empty eyes were staring at where Fong Bujua was standing. Beside the bed stood a monster. It had a hunched body, and its neck and head were like a vulture's. Its upper body was human, and its lower body was like a spider's. It had a huge silk sack and 8 insect legs. The monster's mouth was filled with blood, and it was slowly dripping down from the corner of its lips. It looked like Fong Bujua, the uninvited guest, had disturbed its meal. Seeing someone push the door open, the monster's throat made a strange noise. It walked around the bed and closed in on Fong Bujua. Facing this kind of monster, Fong Bujua did not want to engage in close combat. He quickly took out his handgun, aimed at the monster, and pulled the trigger. He fired 5 times in a row, at a distance of less than 5 meters, and inside the room, Fong Bujue, who had AD in marksmanship, hit all his bullets. But to his surprise, the monster was surprisingly weak. The first 2 bullets hit its chest, and it appeared to have lost its ability to move. After the next 3 bullets, it was already lying on the ground, motionless. What the hell is this? Fong Bujue looked at the disgusting monster, and he was confused by this scenario. He put the gun away and walked to the female corpse on the bed to see if there were any other clues. The body was stretched out, and it was motionless. Fong Bujue suddenly realized that the female corpse's face looked familiar. Wait a minute, isn't this the one who hanged herself? Fong Bujue suddenly realized. Right then, the female corpse suddenly moved. Her festering body suddenly sat up, and she turned her face toward Fong Bujue. She opened her mouth and let out a shrill scream. Fong Bujue felt like his eardrums were about to burst. He was about to use the wrench to shut her up when something strange happened again. He once again lost control of his body, and the things that he saw turned into cinematic. The woman who came back to life, the strange monster, the mansion behind the garden, they all disappeared, and the scene changed again. In the blink of an eye, Fong Bujue's surroundings turned into a busy office. He was sitting behind a large table, and the computer on the table was still using a CRT monitor. The computer case was placed on the table, and there were piles of documents and office equipment around it. The company that you work for is facing bankruptcy. The higher-ups have decided to lay off the employees. This jump is too big. There has to be a limit to the stream of consciousness. This time, Fong Bujue was really confused. As the company's youngest vice manager, you have been given the responsibility of laying off employees. You have to dismiss a large number of seniors who are more experienced than you and be responsible for explaining things to them. Therefore, you are facing tremendous pressure. Hey, what kind of plot is this? Please let me spend a night at a haunted house or go to the mansion to kill some monsters. Fong Bujue gasped internally. The plot has suddenly changed to this kind of realistic plot. This is the scariest part. Speaking of which, is this related to the 2 plot lines from earlier? Could it be the same person? No way. This man's house was destroyed by a typhoon. He was responsible for laying off employees during the day, but when he came home at night, his house was haunted. His friend was a strange uncle who lived in a mansion to raise monsters. Is this man even human? After lunch break, the office got busy again. The introduction ended. Just like before, it only explained some unnecessary settings and then gave Fong Bujue a main quest. Okay. The main mission has been triggered. Work until the end of the day. There is only one thing that remained the same, and that was that everything around him was still in black and white. Fong Bujue could move again, but now he really wanted to bang his head against the monitor. What do you mean by work until the end of the day? At least explain what my job is. Also, what time do people get off work at this place? Everyone in the office was busy. They ran back and forth with documents or sat in front of the computer, typing furiously on the keyboard. There was no sign of anyone slacking off. The few young female employees were in such a hurry even when they were printing something. They did not even have the time to chat, much less eat snacks or look at themselves in the mirror. The male employees looked like they were facing a great enemy. They looked like they were constipated. Some of them even tied a white band around their head with words like root character written on it. They made working at work feel like it was a college entrance exam. So, this is the power of laying off employees, Fong Bujue said. Now that I think about it, they're just putting on a show for me. Hirata-kun. A voice interrupted Fong Bujue's train of thought. Fong Bujue turned around and saw a balding middle-aged man in his 40s wearing black-rimmed glasses. Is he talking to me? Fong Bujue asked. So, my name is Hirata. How am I supposed to pronounce such a name that is destined to bring about my downfall? Yes, Fong Bujue answered as he looked at the man. This is the financial report for the previous quarter. The department head wants it before the end of the day, the middle-aged man said as he handed over a document. Fong Bujue thought, if the department head wants it before the end of the day, why are you giving it to me, the deputy department head? Even if the department head went to take a dump, you could have placed it on his desk, right? Are you trying to show off your ability to work in front of me? Or are you afraid that after you place it on the department head's desk, the other colleagues will secretly throw your finished report into the shredder to set you up? Phone booed you aside and said in a low voice, "Why would I want to think about that? What does it have to do with me?" "Hirata-kun, what did you say?" The middle-aged man did not hear him clearly and asked with confusion. I understand. I will pass it on to the department head. Just leave it to me," Phone Bujue answered casually. The middle-aged man bowed respectfully to one of his juniors. "Thank you, Hirata-kun." Then, he turned to leave. "What is this? Is this scenario trying to tell me that being unemployed is scarier than being haunted?" Phone Bujue grimaced. He loosened his collar and tossed the report to the side. Then, he started to look for clues related to the game. There were so many things on the desk and so many people in the office. He refused to believe that he would not be able to find out anything about Hirata-kun. Chapter 116. The calendar on the wall showed that it was November 24th, 1990. Phone Bujue worked for a company that manufactured electronic equipment. It was considered a big company in town, but it was still a far cry from those in the big city. Before Phone Bujue started his investigation, he reached into his pocket as usual. The 3 keys appeared again. This meant that he would need to use them soon. As someone who lived in the 2050s, if there was a computer before him, the first thing he would do was open it. Then, there was no then. Looking at the black screen and the blinking cursor, Phone Bujue, who knew nothing about DOS, was dumbfounded. He helplessly flipped through the paper documents on the table. After 20 minutes, he was sure that they were all useless papers. Therefore, he went to look through the drawers one by one. As expected, one of the drawers was locked. He took out the key to try, and there was one that fit. After opening the drawer, Phone Bujue saw a large envelope. It was bulging. Underneath the large envelope was a smaller envelope with the word resignation written on it. Phone Bujue looked around suspiciously before opening both envelopes. The larger envelope contained Hirata Shuichi's resume. This kid graduated from Kyoto University. No wonder he was able to become the vice director before the age of 30. Phone Bujue had no idea why he would want to start a career in a small town like this. Inside the small envelope was naturally the resignation letter. Phone Bujue took a look at it, and he had a rough idea of what had happened. This Hirata was a good person. He wanted to keep as many of the employees from poor families as possible, and he had already made up his mind to resign. After reading it, Phone Bujue put everything back, locked the drawer, and went to the toilet. The reason why he hid in the toilet cubicle was because he planned to use a decisive victory again. He didn't want to use it in an office with many people. If the splitting headache came again and he suddenly fell from his chair, it was possible that it would cause a commotion. Taking a deep breath, Phone Bujue activated his title skill. The result was the same as the last time he used it. He felt a piercing pain in his head. However, there was still no information about the boss in front of him. Only his own face flashed in front of him. This face was the same as the last time he saw it. Its expression was numb, and its eyes were wide open, but there was no light in them. Just as Phone Bujue was holding his head and gradually recovering from the dizziness and headache, he heard the sound of the toilet door being opened. From the sound of footsteps, he could tell that 2 people had walked in. The 2 of them walked to the urinal, and while they were relieving themselves, they chatted with each other. "Hey, you saw at the staircase, right?" "Ah, yes, that scumbag minister is getting bolder and bolder." "Chill. Be careful not to let others hear you." "Tisk, so be it. After all, I wanted to quit this job a long time ago. That Fukui, isn't it all his fault that the company is in this state?" The man gulped and said angrily, "He keeps making stupid decisions and pushing the blame onto others. I heard that this is not the first time he's been embezzling company funds. The company is facing bankruptcy, but a few days ago he bought that luxurious manor house and moved in as if nothing had happened. It is because of people like him that everyone has lost their jobs." "Sigh. Even if we know that, what can we do? By then, the two had reached the sink. After they washed their hands, there was the sound of a lighter lighting a cigarette. They each took a puff and said, "The most pitiful one is Hirata-kun. He always has to clean up that scumbag's mess." It was most likely that man's idea to have Hirata be in charge of the layoffs. What a bad karma. I also heard that Hirata's house happened to be in the area that was most damaged by the previous typhoon. Now, he and his wife have no choice but to move to the longhouse in Sancho. Huh? Is that place even habitable? That's right. The man blew out a puff of smoke. But the worst thing is that his wife cheated on him behind his back. Yes, she was so openly flirting with the department head by the stairs. Even us bystanders couldn't stand it anymore. The man puffed out a puff of smoke as well. I heard that a few years ago, Hirata-kun gave up his bright future in Tokyo and purposely returned to his hometown for Haruko. Haruko was able to work at this company because Hirata-kun went around begging for help. But now, that woman is spending all day with that scumbag department head for money. She's doing these things right under her husband's nose. It's so disgusting. Fong Bujue was shocked listening to the conversation between the two NPCs. This scenario was definitely going to ruin his worldview. Hirata Shuichi's life was more than tragic. His house was destroyed by a typhoon, his wife slept with the scumbag, his job was almost gone, and he did not have much money left. He gave up his bright future and youth, and in the end, he got nothing in return. Furthermore, he kept running into ghosts and monsters every day. This kind of person should just end his own life. Hey, I think there's someone inside that cubicle. The two who were conversing suddenly lowered their voices. Have we been overheard? By the way, who is that? This is bad. When I passed the office earlier, Hirata-kun didn't seem to be in his seat. Could it be? The two's voices were so soft that Fong Bujue could not hear them anymore. He was still considering how to get out of this situation. To his surprise, the problem was solved so quickly because Fong Bujue once again lost control of his body. That's impossible. Again? Fong Bujue asked. Don't tell me this scenario has 4 or more main storylines. Is there an end to this? The answer was yes. It was already over. This time, even the system audio did not appear, and the scenery before Fong Bujue did not turn into cinematic. Instead, it turned into a projection on the wall. In that second, he found himself inside a room made of cement. There were no windows, and the door was no longer in his sight. When he came back to his senses, he found that he could suddenly see colors, and the clicking sound in his ears gradually became clearer. At that moment, Fong Bujue was wearing a restraining outfit meant for a mental patient. His arms were crossed before his chest, and his sleeves had no cuffs. They went around his body and ended behind his back. His neck, waist, legs, and ankles were tied tightly by custom-made buckles. They secured his body to a chair, and he could only maintain a sitting position. Even moving left and right required a lot of effort. The most uncomfortable thing was that his eyelids were taped to his eye sockets, and they could not be closed. At that moment, his eyes felt dry and uncomfortable. The clicking sound came from a small projector on the table behind him. The device was aimed at the wall before Fong Bujue, and it projected a black and white image. The last image on the screen was the toilet that he had been in earlier. Someone reached out and snapped twice before Fong Bujue's eyes. Fong Bujue turned his eyes around and saw a man in his 30s. He was wearing an old checkered suit. The suit looked old-fashioned, but the material and workmanship were exquisite, which meant that it was expensive. The man wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses and had a normal hairstyle. He looked normal and kind, but when he looked at Fong Bujue, there was confusion in his eyes. "Hirata-kun, are you okay?" the man asked. "Who are you?" Fong Bujue asked. The man's expression shifted, and he took out a mini flashlight from his pocket. He aimed it at Fong Bujue's eyes and leaned closer to study them. Fong Bujue's eyes were stung by the light, and he felt even worse. Hey, don't do that. It's too bright. Who are you? Doctor? I am Dr. Watanabe. Don't you remember me? The man asked. How did I get here? What am I doing? Fong Bujue asked. I told you, Doctor, you're wasting your time. Another voice came from behind Fong Bujue. It was his blind spot, but the owner of the voice soon walked up from behind him. The man was in his 50s. His sideburns were white, and his face was fierce and resolute. He wore a trench coat and held a half-smoked cigarette in his hand. "Officer Tachibana, please don't interrupt me. This is very important," Watanabe said. Tachibana put out the cigarette with annoyance. He put his hands in his pockets and stared at Fong Bujue, or rather, at Hirata Shuichi. "Have you remembered anything, Hirata-kun?" "Hirata-kun," Watanabe asked. Fong Bujue did not know how to answer. The only thing he could confirm was that the 3 stories that he had experienced earlier were all from Hirata Shuichi's memory. He decided to tell the truth and see what kind of feedback this NPC would give him. "I was walking home when I ran into a woman with a split mouth." Just as he said that, Tachibana beside him roared, "You be *starred. Are you done yet?" He wanted to grab Fong Bujue's hair, but thankfully, Dr. Watanabe stepped in to stop him. "Officer, please calm down." Watanabe stopped him. "Officer." Fong Bujue had been thinking about the situation that he was in. Then, he came up with a bold hypothesis. "Did I kill someone? Did you kill someone?" Tachibana repeated his question and then laughed mirthlessly. "You finally admitted to your crime, haven't you? I thought you were going to deny it until the end." "Dr. Watanabe, are you a psychiatrist?" Fong Bujue turned to ask. "Yes," Watanabe answered. "Then, you must know about multiple personality disorder, right?" Watanabe hesitated before answering. "Of course, I know about it. What is the meaning of this? This kid is trying to play crazy to get away with it?" Tachibana, who stood to the side, yelled. His anger was about to set his hair on fire. Fong Bujue ignored him and said, "I'm not Hirata Shuichi." Chapter 117. Fong Bujue said, "You can call me Mr. F. Damn it," Tachibana cursed as he closed in on Fong Bujue. From the looks of it, it was quite likely that he would pounce on Fong Bujue. Dr. Watanabe reached out to block him as he asked Fong Bujue, "Mr. F, do you know where Officer Yamada's body is?" Fong Bujue replied, "No, I don't know who Yamada is, but I can roughly guess what happened. Is that so? Then, Mr. F, does Hirata know of your existence?" Watanabe asked. "In the past, he shouldn't have known of my existence, but now, I'm not sure either," Fong Bujue replied. "I only have vague memories of Hirata's crimes. So I have some questions for you, Dr. Watanabe." Tachibana yelled from the side, "Doctor, this kid is obviously making up a name at the last minute. He's trying to bluff his way out by claiming he has schizophrenia." Watanabe said, "Verifying the authenticity of these symptoms is part of my job. Inspector, please trust me and allow me to do what I'm supposed to do." TSK. Watanabe walked out of Fong Bujue's line of sight and stood at a corner behind him. Soon, there was the sound of him lighting up a cigarette again. Watanabe sighed and turned to ask Fong Bujue, "What do you want to ask?" I've been watching the recording, right?" Fong Bujue asked. "Yes," Watanabe answered. "Why would you show me the recording?" Watanabe stared into Fong Bujue's eyes and organized his words. Then he said, "You know, after Hirata was arrested, he showed serious signs of hallucination. He insisted that he had not killed anyone." He paused. He told the police that he had only killed a monster. "You're here to confirm whether Hirata has really lost his mind or not?" Fong Bujue asked. "Yes." "What was the recording you showed me earlier?" "It was recorded with the assistance of the police." "It was a replay of some relevant footage," Watanabe answered. "Did you play it for me in reverse chronological order?" Fong Bujue asked. Watanabe paused for a moment. "Yes, this will make it easier to awaken your—" Before he could finish, Fong Bujue interrupted. "Can you play it again in order for me to see?" Watanabe and Tachibana exchanged glances. Tachibana was furious and didn't want to say anything. He just nodded slightly. Watanabe walked to the table and fiddled with it a few times. The projector started moving again. "Doctor, can you remove the tape?" "Let me blink," Fong Bujue said. "All right." Watanabe agreed without hesitation. He did not want to do this in the first place, but Hirata Shuichi had screamed and screamed in shock when he saw the picture on the wall. That was why the Tachibana Police Department had made such a big deal out of it. Fujiwara had some clues in his mind, but he needed more evidence to support his hypothesis. The video started playing. The image was in black and white, and there was no speaker attached to the projector. Other than the clicking sound, there was no other sound. Of course, there was no need for any sound. The content of the video was simple, and the length was short. It only replayed a few key scenes to help the crazed Hirata Shuichi remember what had happened. The actors were all from the police station, and the person filming was Dr. Watanabe. The first part of the video, the first scene, was inside Hirata's company. At first, the camera focused on Hirata's desk. The next scene was inside the staircase. A man and a woman were hugging each other, pretending to be intimate. The third scene was inside the toilet. The two men were smoking and chatting. This part is based on the testimony of two of Hirata's colleagues, Watanabe explained. They said that Hirata overheard their conversation in the toilet that day, and that might have given him the motive to kill Hirata. Fujiwara nodded as he focused his attention on the screen. The second part soon started, and it was the most crucial part. The camera started with a panoramic view of a manor house. It captured the address, Rokabanko number 4-5. There was a garden in front of the manor house. The second scene showed the interior of the manor house. There was a spacious foyer and a staircase that led to the second floor. The third scene took place inside the room where Fujiwara saw the monster. The third scene recorded an officer who played Hirata, holding a fake gun, pushed open the door and walked into the room. A female officer who played Haruko was lying on the bed. The other person played the minister. When he saw the person with the gun walk in, he jumped up from the bed in a panic. As he mumbled something, he walked around the bed to grab the gun. Then, the actor who played Hirata pretended to shoot him and killed him. This is the rough outline of the crime. Since there are no witnesses, Watanabe turned to look at Fujiwara. Hirata's testimony cannot be used, so we can only speculate based on the investigation of the crime scene. By the way, what is the victim's name? Fujiwara asked. Fukui Shinichiro. Officer Tachibana's low and raspy voice came from behind him. He's your boss at the company. The video soon reached the third part. In this part, the actor who played Hirata asked for directions from passerby. According to the witness, that day, Hirata asked her for directions to Sanchome. Initially, he was calm, but suddenly, he started to look panicked. I believe that at the time, Hirata's mental state was at its breaking point. He not only forgot his own address, but he also started to hallucinate. The next scene in the video was a long house. Hirata's actor walked in and closed the door. The next scene showed an officer bending over to knock on the door. The neighbor's grandmother heard Hirata screaming at night, so she went to knock on the door to ask, but Hirata told her that he did not scream at all. He paused. However, the grandmother saw a strange shadow through the gap of the door, and she called the police. When the police arrived, they found Haruko's body hanging from the ceiling while Hirata sat calmly at the table, drinking tea. The police found Officer Yamada's gun, which had gone missing not long ago, inside the longhouse. The video ended there, and the room fell into a short silence. It was Officer Tachibana who broke the silence. Then, Mr. F., are you satisfied now? Quickly tell us Yamada's whereabouts and plead guilty, he said impatiently. Or, do you plan to pretend to have lost your memory again and call yourself Mr. A or Mr. B? Fujiwara ignored him and fell in a deep thought. After a full 5 minutes, he asked, what is the date today? Chapter 118. December 2nd, Watanabe answered. Fujiwara asked, the first video took place on November 24th, correct? That's right. Then, what are the dates of the second and third videos? Fujiwara asked again. Watanabe did not answer immediately. He seemed to need some time to think about it, but Officer Tachibana was more familiar with the case. So he answered, Fukui was shot on November 26th. That afternoon, he sent all the helpers away. The reason was to meet your wife, Haruko Sato. When he said that, He hesitated for a moment, probably trying to come up with a more suitable explanation. Personally, I think a man like Fukui deserved to die, but you dragged my men into this because you wanted to get the murder weapon. I will not show you any mercy. Watanabe then added, Fukui's body was only found the next day at noon. Since it was a gunshot, the investigation was very careful. That day, Hirata-kun went to work as usual. He was very calm, but Haruko Sato was absent from work. That night, the incident in the third video took place. Then, Officer Yamada's disappearance should have happened between the time Hirata left the company on November 24th and the morning of November 26th, right? Officer Tachibana answered. On the night of the 25th, he rode his bicycle out on patrol, and no one saw him after that. Has the bicycle been discovered? Phone Bujua asked. I'm asking you where he is. Tachibana yelled. So, there isn't one. Phone Bujua sighed. I see. Kid, do you need a beating from that tone? Tachibana tossed away the cigarette, and charged at Shungu again. Phone Bujua ignored him and continued. Based on what I know, the security in Japan is not bad. The ratio of police officers to the population is quite high. If this is a big city, only the police officers and special forces will be armed with guns. But in a small town like this, I believe, everything from security to criminal cases will be handled by a fixed and limited number of people. So, it is not surprising that Yamada would become a target. He paused for a moment before continuing. Here's what I'm thinking. Assuming that Hirata plans to steal Yamada's gun, he has two options. The first is to steal it, and the second is to rob it. Stealing a gun requires skill, not to mention stealing a police gun. Once caught, he would definitely go to jail, and his intention to murder Fukui would be exposed. Hirata did not care about the consequences of his actions, but that was under the premise that he had successfully killed Fukui. Before he completed his crime, he would not allow anything to go wrong. Then, the probability of snatching was obviously higher than stealing. Of course, the crime was also heavier. However, a man who planned to kill had already realized this. Since it was a robbery, there was no need for any skills. He just needed to find a place where there was no one around at night, attack the defenseless Yamada from behind, and then take away the gun. But if that was the case, Yamada wouldn't have gone missing. At most, he would have fainted on the side of the road. Now that Yamada has indeed gone missing, it means that there was an accident when Hirata tried to steal the gun. Perhaps he only planned to knock Officer Yamada out, but he accidentally killed him during the operation. UB****. This time, Tachibana was serious. He walked forward to grab Phone Bujua by the collar. You finally admitted to your crime. Tell me, where is Yamada's body? Phone Bujua continued to explain calmly. I don't know. I'm just speculating based on the clues that you've given me. Air. At this point, Tachibana landed a heavy punch on his stomach. His life points dropped by 30%, and he was inflicted with the status of paralysis. Officer Tachibana. Watanabe walked forward to pull the man away. Please do not abuse your authority on the suspect. Suspect? This kid has killed at least 2 people. Tachibana roared. That's enough, Officer Tachibana. That's enough, Watanabe advised. Phone Bujua had no choice but to swallow the insult. The breath in his chest was uneven, and it took him a long time to catch his breath. Without even realizing it, he was immersed in the joy of deduction. This punch made him realize that he was inside a nightmare mode scenario. Even if the 2 NPCs before him were humanoid NPCs that he could communicate with, there was no such thing as safety. Any small mistake could lead to his death. If he said the wrong thing, or even if his attitude was bad, there was a chance that he would trigger a death flag. Any random NPC could kill him instantly. Phone Bujua gasped for air and swallowed. He continued the sentence that was interrupted earlier. If Hirata ambushed Officer Yamada when he was on patrol and killed him, then the bike should have been found. Tachibana seemed to have calmed down, and Watanabe released his grip. The 2 of them turned to look at Phone Bujua, waiting to hear what he had to say. When Hirata realized that he had accidentally killed an officer, there were only 2 possible reactions. The first was to grab the gun and run. The second was to deal with the body before running away. Even if it was the second scenario, he wouldn't have been able to move the body and the bike at the same time. At most, he would have tossed the bike to an inconspicuous corner and tried to move the body away. At this point, he paused. By the way, does Hirata own a car? No, Watanabe replied. Actually, he doesn't have a driver's license. Then we can basically rule out the possibility that he ran over Yamada with his car and tossed the body and the bike into the trunk. Fong Bujue said with some thought. He paused for about 10 seconds to arrange his thoughts. I have 3 hypotheses. First, after Hirata ambushed Yamada, he dragged the body away and disposed of it in a secluded place. The bike was left by the side of the road and was found by a third person. This third person probably didn't witness the crime, and that was why he dared to pick up the bike. The chance of him being a homeless person is very high. Perhaps he has already left the small town, or perhaps he found out that the bike was related to some incident and tossed it into the river out of fear or even dismantled it. Second, after Hirata ambushed Yamada, the latter did not die or faint, and he even saw Hirata's face clearly. Hirata had no choice. If he let Yamada go, he would be arrested soon. Therefore, he had no choice but to use the gun that he had stolen to kidnap Yamada and drag him to a secluded place to detain him, or kill him. If that was the case, Yamada was the one who pushed the bike away, and Hirata was the one holding him hostage. Third, after Hirata realized that he had accidentally killed Yamada, he did run away with the gun. However, after he left, someone else must have gotten rid of the body and the bike. What do you mean? Do you have an accomplice? Officer Tachibana demanded sternly. That is just a logical hypothesis. Theoretically, that is completely possible. For example, someone might have seen what happened in the dark, and that person happened to know Hirata personally. Therefore, after Hirata escaped, he cleaned up the crime scene to try and cover up the incident. In the future, he could use this incident to extort money from Hirata. In fact, he could even have Hirata use the gun to kill someone for him. Fong Bujue answered. That's enough. That's enough of your bullshit. When are you going to stop pretending? Tell us Yamada's whereabouts now. Officer Tachibana's patience had reached its limit. Please wait a moment. There's still some things that I'm not sure about. Fong Bujue said. On the afternoon of the 24th of November, Hirata came up with a motive to kill Yamada. On the night of the 25th of November, he managed to get the gun from Yamada. On the afternoon of the 26th of November, he went to Fukui's mansion to catch Yamada in the act of committing murder. He looked at Watanabe. Since there are no witnesses, how do you know that Haruko was in the room when Hirata broke into the room that afternoon? That was based on Hirata's own description and the conclusion from the investigation of the crime scene, Watanabe said. He said that when he opened the door, he saw Haruko lying on the bed. A monster was attacking Haruko, so he used the gun to kill the monster. Then, we asked him where he got the gun, but he said that he couldn't remember. So Haruko didn't die at the time? Fong Bujue asked. On the night of the 27th, the police received a call and rushed to the scene. They found Haruko Sato's body inside Hirata's house. From the evidence left behind at the scene, it was a suicide. The estimated time of death was the afternoon of the 27th. At the time, Hirata was working at the company as usual, Watanabe said. In other words, on the 26th, after Hirata went to the mansion to kill someone, he brought Haruko home. The next day, Hirata showed up at the company as if nothing had happened, but his wife committed suicide at home. Fong Bujue continued. It's unlikely that Haruko Sato committed suicide to commit suicide with her lover. She also did not report the case to the police. That means that her suicide was either due to mental trauma or due to guilt and fear toward her husband. There's no need for you to repeat things that we already know, Tachibana grumbled impatiently. What you already know, these 3 videos have more or less been reconstructed. Fong Bujue continued. But what you don't know is Officer Yamada's whereabouts. They are stored in Hirata Shuichi's mind, which has already gone mad. He moved his gaze to Dr. Watanabe's face. So, Dr. Watanabe is trying to help you awaken Hirata's memory. Have you remembered anything? Watanabe asked. Mr. F? I'm sorry, Phone Bujue answered. The memory that I saw was also from the 3 videos, but the content was different from the ones in your videos. What I saw appeared to be the world of monsters in Hirata's imagination. Watanabe sighed. When a person's brain is seriously traumatized, their memory might be affected. For example, if a person was beaten or tortured when he was young, due to the pain of the memory being too much for his mind to handle, his brain might seal off the related memory, and the person will forget everything that happened, as if it never happened. Sometimes, the memory is not sealed but changed. For example, in Hirata-san's case, perhaps in his memory, he only remembered that he saw his wife being attacked by a monster. But in reality, Shingu continued, sometimes the memory is not sealed off but changed like Hirata-san. Perhaps in his memory, he only remembers seeing his wife being attacked by monsters. But in reality, I know that. Phone Bujue cut him off. I know a thing or two about this. He moved his neck that was pinned down and uncomfortable. When one's memory is sealed, it might lead to multiple personality disorder, and if it is changed, it might lead to hallucinations. After all that, where is Yamada? Do you know or not? Do you remember? Officer Tachibana stood before Phone Bujue and glared at him harshly. It looked like he was going to use violence again. Even though Phone Bujue did not want to take another punch, he had no way of resisting. His whole body was bound, and he could only take the beating. He did not attempt to use body enhancement spell because based on the setting and the words and actions of these 2 NPCs, if he suddenly used that kind of supernatural skill, then before he managed to break free, Watanabe would be scared into retreating and Tachibana would draw their guns without hesitation. That kind of development would lead to his death. To find out where Yamada is, I have to go back, Phone Bujue said in a hurry. What did you say? Tachibana was confused. I have to return to that black and white world to investigate, Phone Bujue said. Watanabe looked at him and frowned. You mean, you have to return to Hirata's mental world? He asked probingly. How do you do that? Watch the video again? No, that's no longer useful. Phone Bujue said. Didn't I watch the video earlier? I only saw the normal footage. When Hirata was watching the video, I experienced the distorted memory in his mental world, and then I was transported here. Is there any way for me to return? He said darkly. And I have to return to a time before the evening of November 25th. Very good. Since you're willing to cooperate, you can talk to the doctor now. Tachibana's tone suddenly changed. It was so calm that it was unsettling. Phone Bujue was startled when he heard that. What? He turned to look at Watanabe. Haven't I been talking to Dr. Watanabe? Watanabe cut him off. You've already recovered the memory of the case and recognized your mental condition. You've also locked onto the memory blind spot of Yamada, so we can rest easy now. Huh? Phone Bujue had no idea what they were talking about. You two suddenly, before he could finish his question, he lost the ability to speak because he had returned to the state where he was watching the cinematic from the first-person perspective. The scene before his eyes changed again. Phone Bujue felt like he was being toyed with by this scenario. Initially, he thought it was a normal ghost story setting, and then he thought it was a supernatural event that progressed through multiple storylines. In the end, he realized that the first 3 incidents were in a reverse timeline, and they were merely the distorted memory of a mental patient. The scenario had turned into a murder in the real world, and then he had no idea what was going to happen next. Buzz. It was the sound of an incandescent lamp. A blinding white light jolted Phone Bujue out of his temporary daze. He closed one of his eyes and turned his head to the side. After 2 seconds, he got used to the sudden increase in light, and he could see his surroundings clearly. Phone Bujue was wearing a patient's garb with stripes on it. He was sitting before a table. His hands were cuffed to the arms of the chair, and his feet were cuffed together. There was a lamp on the table, and there were some paper documents spread out on the table. Sitting across from the table was a man in a white coat. He looked to be in his 50s, and his forehead was crawling with wrinkles. He was holding a piece of paper in his hand, and he was using a pen to write something on it. There was a mini tape recorder next to him. The room was not enclosed. There was a very small window with iron bars at the top. An array of moonlight filtered through the gap. There was a bed in the corner of the room, and there was a toilet in the other corner. The walls were no longer the monotonous color of cement, but they were painted with soft and bright colors. Fong Bujue could see the door that led to the exit. There was a very small window above the door. The window was not made of glass, but was filled with a very tight, intersecting iron mesh. There was a board at the bottom of the door, and it appeared like it could only be opened from the outside. That should be the opening for the prisoner to deliver food. Then, Hirata-kun, if you're ready, let's start this conversation, the man in the white coat said. Fong Bujue sighed. I'm sorry, but there are 3 things that I need you to tell me. The man was silent for 2 seconds, and he looked at him with a frown. What are they? Who are you? Where am I? And today's date, Fong Bujue asked. The man took a deep breath and sighed heavily. Sigh. He picked up the mini tape recorder next to him, pressed the recording button, and spoke into his mouth. March 9th, 2005, patient 0098, Hirata Shuichi. Recorder, Takura Taro. Takura placed the recorder to the side and told Fong Bujue. You don't remember me? Fong Bujue ignored him. He tried his best to lower his head and touch his face with the back of his hand. After touching it twice, he could confirm that his face had not aged by 15 years. Even though he looked like he was wearing a prisoner's outfit, when he opened the game menu, the outfit tab had not changed. Regardless, from the NPC's perspective, the man before him was undeniably Hirata Shuichi in his 40s. You, Takura, appear to be a very perceptive person. Who are you? Are you Hirata, Watanabe, Tachibana, or someone else? There was a lot of information in this question, but Fong Bujue reacted quickly. I have multiple personality disorder. Yes, Takura replied. He picked up the document and sighed. Since 1991, when you were sent here, many doctors have participated in your treatment and research. Currently, there are 3 confirmed personalities. The main one is Hirata Shuichi, and there are 2 others. One is a psychiatrist called Watanabe, and the other is a police officer called Tachibana. So which one are you? Or none of them? Fong Bujue leaned back in his chair. You can call me Mr. F. He looked at the ceiling. Watanabe represents Hirata's rationality and wisdom, and Tachibana represents Hirata's conscience and self-blame. As for Hirata himself, I don't know. I haven't met him before. Mr. F? Rationality? Conscience? Gao-tsung coldly snorted. All right, Mr. F. Then what do you represent? Your identity, occupation. Me? Fong Bujue smiled. I am a mystery novelist. I came from a higher dimension and entered this body. He looked relaxed. I am slowly breaking out of some kind of cage created by my own thoughts. The main body could be the Hirata that I have not met before, or it could be something else. From the most chaotic and blurry memory world, I broke through to the mental world of the subconscious. Then, I picked up some important memories and arrived here. He nudged his body forward. Now, I seriously suspect that Dr. Takura, you, and this prison cell are real or just a symbol of another prison. Chapter 119. Taka sighed deeply. He turned his head and said into the tape recorder next to him, 0098 has gained a new persona. He calls himself Mr. F, the mystery novelist. Mr. F has the same surreal hallucination as Hirata Shuichi's main persona. He believes that he is a spiritual entity from a higher dimension and is currently possessing this body. Fong Bujue waited for him to finish before he asked the question that he had been meaning to ask. Doctor, since it is now 2005, then Hirata's case should have been closed a long time ago. How did the case end? 2 cases of premeditated murder, and one of them was a police officer. The circumstances were serious, but considering your motive and mental state, the final verdict was life imprisonment. Is this a mental hospital? Fong Bujue asked. This is a prison for the mentally ill, Taka answered. Every quarter, we conduct a new assessment on all the inmates. He paused. That is why we are talking now. How has Hirata been in the past 15 years? Fong Bujue asked. More normal than you are now, Taka replied. When Hirata-kun was conscious, he told me that whenever he was reminded of the past, he would enter a black and white world. No matter how many times he did it, all he saw was the memory of ghosts. Sometimes the personas of Watanabe and Tachibana would appear, and then Hirata-kun would talk to himself. I have tried to communicate with these two personas, and the details that they described matched with the police records. I believe that these two personas did not really remember what happened at the time. They merely treated what the police told Hirata as their own memory. His gaze moved away from the document to fall on Fong Bujue's face. What about you? Mr. F, you seem to be very interested in that case. That means that you have no idea what really happened, right? Yes, I was about to ask you that. 15 years have passed, and since the verdict was 2 cases of premeditated murder, then Officer Yamada's body should have been found by now, right? Fong Bujue asked. Officer Yamada's body was only found 7 years after the case, Taka replied. It was around that time that I started to get in touch with you. What? Yamada's body couldn't even be found back then. How can you convict him of 2 murders? Fong Bujue asked. Well, Gao Song said, based on the situation at that time, the case was very clear. Hirata-kun has lost his mind, and he has no one to rely on. There is no one who can stand up for him. The lawyer that the court assigned to him will plead guilty. So, basically, whatever the prosecutor says is the truth. All the evidence points to the same fact, which is that he killed the police, stole the gun, and then went on a rampage. Ridiculous, Fong Bujue said. Before we rule out all possibilities, how can we take it for granted? Perhaps Yamada killed Fukui and then hid the gun in Hirata's house. Then he strangled Haruko Sato, who was in the longhouse at the time, and made it look like a suicide. Finally, he escaped. If that is the case, it would explain why Hirata went to work on the 27th as if nothing had happened. Gaotsong looked at him for 2 seconds. Huh, Mr. F, if you appeared 15 years ago and defended yourself as Hirata Shuichi, you might have been able to get away with it. He picked up a document from the table. Unfortunately, today, there are at least 2 points that can overturn your hypothesis. First, Yamada has no connection with Fukui, Hirata, and Haruko Sato. The police have already investigated them. Regardless of whether they were relatives or friends, they had nothing to do with each other. Therefore, he had no motive to do these things. Second, the place where Yamada's body was found was under Hirata's old house that was destroyed by a typhoon. The plot of land was sold by the government 7 years later, and the body was dug up when they were building the foundation for the building. The time of death is estimated to be 7 years ago. Even though the body has been reduced to bones, there are obvious signs of death from external injuries. This is undoubtedly a case of murder and hiding the body. Fong Bujue was silent for a few seconds before he replied, Fine. Actually, I was just dissatisfied with the trial process and came up with a random hypothesis that could be used as a defense. There is no doubt about Hirata's crime, Mr. F, Gao Song said. Now, since I've satisfied your curiosity, why don't you cooperate with me and answer some of my questions? As I expected, you are not real. Fong Bujue interrupted Gao Song and thought internally. I finally understand the meaning of this scenario. Gao Song's face fell, and he suddenly stopped talking. You said that not long after Yamada's body was found, you started to interact with Hirata. When I heard that, I understood everything. Fong Bujue said, 7 years after the crime, when Hirata found out that Yamada's body had been found, he developed another persona. Huh. You mean to say that I am the same kind of existence as Tachibana and Watanabe? No, you are on a higher level than them. From how I see it, there should be 4 layers to Hirata's mental world. Fong Bujue explained slowly. In November 1990, after Hirata committed 2 murders and witnessed his wife commit suicide, he went insane. From then on, most of his time, his mind was trapped in the deepest layer, a world of terror and chaos. 1 month later, the investigation of the case became clearer. Hirata was interrogated multiple times, and he gained some information from the court. Therefore, he developed two new personas, Dr. Watanabe and Officer Tachibana. These two personas could bring him out from the black and white chaos and into the second layer of the world, giving him some time to breathe. They also helped and urged him to deny the memory of ghosts and monsters and try to restore his real memory. Fong Bujua licked his dry lips. The most a psychiatrist can do is to hypnotize the criminal to interrogate them. They would not go as far as recording them. I should have known that the space that Watanabe and Tachibana were in was also a mental world. That place is a subconscious that is deeper than this place. It is somewhere between rational thought and twisted memory. He stared into Takakura's eyes. And you, or rather, this cell that we are in now, is the third layer. Then, what do I represent? Takakura asked. You are also a memory, Fong Bujua said. You represent the normal and trustworthy memory in Hirata's mind over the past 8 years. He leaned back in his chair and raised his head. He wanted to rub the bridge of his nose out of habit, but he realized that his hands were still cuffed, so he had no choice but to continue. Time has dulled some things. After 7 years of psychiatric treatment, with the help of the other two personalities and the fact that he found out about Yamada's death and the location of his death in prison, Hirata was sent to this third floor. On this layer, he can converse with you and analyze things objectively and calmly, accepting and understanding the current situation. If Hirata can stay here with you and not return to the two deeper layers, even if he cannot recover his memory, at least he will be able to recover to a normal person. Fong Bujue's eyes moved to the mini tape recorder. The recorder is the conversation between you and him, or rather, it is the memory that he has personally organized. That is why I said that these memories are normal and trustworthy. He does not want to be mixed up with other memories. But the presence of this recorder proves that Hirata's time here is limited. Takakura's face was filled with helplessness. Mr. F, you're basically right, but I regret to inform you that there are only 3 layers here. He sighed. This place is the layer that is closest to the real world. He looked around. This recorder and the documents on the table, they are all part of Hirata's memory. This room is basically a projection of Hirata's cell in real life. But there is no table, chair, or lamp in the real cell. There are only 3 layers? Fong Bujua asked. How is that possible? Confusion appeared on his face, and he thought to himself, the memory that gave rise to Hirata's motivation has been recovered. The memory of him killing Fukui has been recovered, but is distorted. Even though the memory of him witnessing Haruko Sato hang herself is also distorted, it has been recovered as well. These should have surfaced before and after he was arrested. But how come he has no memory of killing Yamada? Even 7 years later, when he found out about Yamada's death, Takakura's persona only provided limited information. He knew nothing about the murder. Impossible. If there is no further layer, then it means that Hirata has nothing to do with Officer Yamada's death. Fong Bujua stated firmly. That memory does not exist in his brain, so it cannot be found on any layer. Takakura shook his head. But the facts have pointed out. Give me a mirror, Fong Bujua interrupted him. What do you want to do? Takakura asked. I want to leave this place, Fong Bujua answered. At most, you will return to the real world. And when you return to the real world, it means that Hirata will return to me or fall down 2 layers deeper. Takakura appeared to be advising him. I'm not going up, Fong Bujua said. I'm going next door. Next door? What do you mean? Takakura asked. You won't understand. Fong Bujua finally adopted the posture of a higher dimensional life form. Just give me a mirror. In the blink of an eye, Dr. Takakura disappeared, and only Fong Bujua was left in the room. On the table before him, a small mirror with a frame appeared. Behind the frame was a plastic holder that supported the mirror and made it stand diagonally upward. Fong Bujua dragged the chair forward until he was at an angle where he could look into the mirror. He saw that the man in the mirror was not himself. It was a man who looked to be in his 40s, with an unshaven beard and a pale face. Hirata Shuichi, we finally meet. Phone Bujua said to the face in the mirror. He had seen Hirata's resume in the black and white world, and there was a picture on it. Even though the face before him had aged by more than 10 years, he could still recognize it. Chapter 120. Who are you? The face in the mirror really did speak to Phone Bujua. I don't know you. Who I am is not important. Phone Bujua replied as he shot the man a sharp gaze. The important thing is, who are you? Of course, I am Hirata Shuichi, the man replied. No, you're not. You just look like him, Phone Bujua said. Stop pretending. I know there is another personality inside this body. No one knows about your existence. Hirata doesn't know about it. Takura doesn't know about it. Watanabe and Tachibana. None of them know about it, he said confidently. You are the mastermind behind the case from 15 years ago. Ha! Ha ha ha! The man started to laugh. No matter who you are, you're much smarter than that idiot. You can call me Mr. F, Phone Bujua said. You can call me Hirata Shuichi, the man said. You are Hirata Shuichi. Then who is the mental patient who has been locked up in prison for 15 years? Phone Bujua asked. He is an idiot who shares the same name as me. That's all, the man replied. Understood, Phone Bujua said. I wish to ask, when did you part ways with that idiot? Phone Bujua followed the man's lead and asked a question. When I graduated from university, the man replied. Humph, Phone Bujua laughed. I get it now. How about this? For the sake of convenience, I will call you Hirata and that idiot Shuichi. Suit yourself, Hirata said. After graduating from Beijing University, Hirata, you planned to move to the big city, but Shuichi insisted on returning to the small town in his hometown. Is that correct? Phone Bujua asked. Don't you think you're making light of the situation? That idiot. The Hirata in the mirror had a cruel smile on his face. He gave up on the opportunity to work in Tokyo and initiated a breakup with Miss Miko. She is the daughter of a big financial group CEO. Many men have their eyes on her. Then, that idiot returned to his hometown, married his childhood sweetheart, and went to work in an inconspicuous small business. Look at his end. That bitch Haruko had an affair with Fukui behind his back. And he worked so hard, but the company still collapsed because of a scum who filled his pockets. My 6 years of life, the future of this life, was ruined in the hands of that idiot. I see, Phone Bujua said. When he graduated from university, Shoei made a huge and painful choice in life. Hence, you and he were split into two personalities. Shoei was a very honest and kind person. He chose to return to his hometown to get married. As for you, Hirata, you're ambitious and capable. You're tough and ruthless, but in the end, you still lost to Shuichi. He paused for a moment. It was not until 6 years later, on November 24th, 1990, that Hirata overheard the conversation between his colleagues in the toilet. He collapsed, and then you gained the upper hand and gained control of the body. That's a good guess, Mr. F, Hirata answered. You hated Shoei, hated the choice he made that year, hated his character, and hated him for ruining your bright future. Phone Bujua continued. You wanted revenge and completely ruined his life. He thought about it for 2 seconds and started to analyze the previous case. As a well-educated, capable, and ruthless person, when it comes to committing a crime, you're much better than Shoei. If you wanted to kill Fukui, there were many ways, but killing Fukui was not enough. Based on the nature of the case and the circumstances, Shoei's sentence after killing Fukui would be light. His colleagues, and even Haruko, would appear in court to speak on his behalf. Perhaps he would be released after a few years in prison. Phone Bujua laughed. So, you first want to kill a police officer and then use the officer's gun to kill Fukui. This kind of case, Shoei would not be able to get away with it. Ha! You're quite impressive. Logically speaking, the act of killing a police officer could be explained. Even if Shoei could not remember it, there was nothing he could say in front of the evidence. If you killed a random passerby to expand your crime, then Shoei, who had no motive and no memory of that incident, would be treated as suffering from multiple personality disorder. Then, Even his murder of Fukui could be explained away as a mental issue. Feng Bujue sighed. Phew. That's why people who are good at scheming are the scariest. He shrunk his neck. If I were to do this case, on the day of November 25th, I would first bring the burial tools to the planned location of the murder. The ruins of the old house that was destroyed by the typhoon would be a good choice. First, you would be familiar with the area. Second, no matter if it was day or night, even if you were spotted by someone you knew, you could easily come up with a reason to be there. In any case, at night, you would have randomly found a patrolling officer with a gun. You would have made up a reason to lure him there, ambush him, and then hide on the spot. Actually, you didn't plan to hide for too long. As long as you weren't discovered before you killed Fukui, everything would have been fine. However, the government didn't pay attention to the area until 7 years later. Oh, you came up with all that based on your own speculation? Hirata asked. Yes, actually I should have figured out a long time ago, but at the beginning, I didn't know about your existence. Feng Bujue replied. Shoei wouldn't have done something like that. He's a far cry from you. Even if he wanted to steal the gun, he wouldn't have killed someone for it. At most, he would have planned to knock someone out from behind, hoping that before he killed Fukui, he wouldn't have been exposed. His eyes darted around, and he smiled. But Hirata, you're different. If you were the one who committed the crime, I would have been able to come up with the above hypothesis with confidence. Then why don't you continue to guess what happened next? Hirata asked. What happened next is very simple. When you took control of the body, Shoei was in a state where he had no memory. Feng Bujue answered. On the afternoon of the 26th, without a doubt, you knew very well that Haruko had left home to go find Fukui. Therefore, you placed a piece of paper with a number 4 to 5 Rokabanko written on it in your pocket, carried the gun, and went to Fukui's manor house. Then, you temporarily returned the body to Shoei. He suddenly regained consciousness and didn't know what to do. There was a gun in his pocket, and that scared him. Then, he saw that piece of paper and went to Fukui's manor house in a daze. He ran into them on the 2nd floor. Someone like Fukui would have walked towards Shoei while yelling and cursing, trying to chase him away. Rage, pain, confusion, or perhaps some kind of psychological suggestion that you placed on him. There were countless possibilities that could have caused Shoei to pull the gun and shoot him. That was almost certain to happen. This was a trap that you set. At that point, Shoei had a second memory. Not long after he fired the gun, you took control of the body again and carried out the next step. Chapter 121. Obviously, there are some things that Hiruchi wouldn't have done, like leaving Fukui's body unattended. Feng Bujue said, but you, Hirata-kun, your existence explains everything. For me, the moment you appeared, the whole case became a piece of cake. You couldn't have turned yourself in. That would have affected your sentence. You only brought Haruko Sato home and tried your best to scare her, to the point that she didn't dare call the police. From her perspective, she was responsible for her husband's sudden change in personality and Fukui's death, so it wasn't hard to scare her. After all, the gun had been emptied, so you hid it somewhere so that it would be discovered when the police searched. The next day, you went to work at Hiruchi's company as if nothing had happened. You were stronger than him. He didn't know about your existence, but you had all his memories. You purposely went to his company to wait for the police to investigate. The police only needed to get a brief understanding of the situation, and you would naturally be arrested to assist in the investigation. But because the body wasn't discovered until noon on the 27th, nothing happened until it was time to get off work. On the way home, perhaps on a whim, you returned the body to Hiruchi because you wanted to see how the two of them would react when he returned home to face Haruko. At that time, Hiruchi's mental state was on the verge of collapse. He was so distracted that he couldn't even remember the way home. That was the start of his third memory. Then, when he returned to the longhouse and opened the door to see his wife hanging herself, his mental state collapsed completely, and he started to scream. The old lady next door heard the commotion and came to knock on the door. You took over the body to deal with her, purposely letting her see something strange before sending her away, waiting for her to call the police. At the end of the day, you just didn't want to call the police and turn yourself in. In the end, as you wished, the police came to the longhouse to arrest you and found Yamada's gun. That explains why you were drinking tea so calmly at the time. After you were arrested, your revenge plan was considered success. You returned to the conscious world until today. As for Shuichi, he went mad. The prison imprisoned his physical body, and the 3 remaining memories in his mind were distorted into terrifying images, tormenting his mind day and night. He lived like this for 15 years, and if there are no accidents, this situation will continue until he dies. Hee hee. Ha ha. Hirata's eyes widened, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He leaned closer to the mirror and said, "That idiot deserves it." No, in reality, Shoei's choice can't be said to be right or wrong. It can only be said that good people don't have good karma, Fong Bujue said. But if it wasn't for you, he wouldn't have ended up like this. Then what do you want? Mr. F? Hirata asked with a cold smile. Do you think you can change the past? No, but I can bring you and him relief, Fong Bujue replied. Release? Oomph. What a joke. He's the one being tortured. I don't need anything. I have 3 layers of consciousness here, and the one that Shuichi has experienced the most over the years is the deepest and scariest layer. Fong Bujue cut him off. I don't know how many layers there are on your side, but based on your mental state, I believe there should be only 1 layer. For 15 years. No, for 21 years, you've been experiencing some kind of scary memory similar to Shuichi's deepest layer of consciousness. Am I right? I have no idea what you're talking about. Hirata's eyes were darting around, and his tone was obviously lying. My consciousness was not created by this body. It is very convenient for me to move around in these layers of mental prison. The more I know, the higher the layer I can go to. Now, I can take over Hirata's body in the real world, and similarly, I could go to your side and toss you to anywhere, Fong Bujue said darkly. That's impossible. Hirata roared. Before he could finish, the mirror shattered. Fong Bujue stood up. His handcuffs and ankles had all disappeared, and the outfit that he was wearing had returned to the purple suit. He touched his pocket, and the key was indeed there. Of the 3 keys, there was only one that had not been used. He walked to the door of the sick room, aimed at the lock, and opened the last door, the door that represented the mental prison. Outside the door, white light poured into the room and swallowed Fong Bujue. The next second, the scenery changed again, but this time, under the control of his own consciousness, he entered that unknown world. Hirata's world. Hirata-kun, is this real? A beautiful woman appeared before him. She looked to be in her 20s, and she wore a down jacket. She stood before him. Fong Bujue stood before her in his clown costume. It was quite strange, but in this NPC's eyes, she should be looking at Hirata Shuichi. The 2 were standing on a pedestrian bridge. According to legend, this was the place where confessions, breakups, suicides, and other dangerous activities were common. The street under the bridge showed that they were on the streets of a large city. Even though it was already midnight, in the city filled with skyscrapers, it was still a scene of debauchery. What are you talking about? Fong Bujue asked tentatively. Hirata-kun, you just said, after graduation, you're going back home to marry Sato. When the girl asked that question, there were tears in her eyes. Sato. Then this woman is Miko, right? Shuichi chose Haruko, and Hirata. Fong Bujue said. All these years, Hirata has been reliving the scene where he broke up with Miko every day. That was Shuichi's choice, but it is also his memory. He has seen the person he loves cry and leave him, but he is unable to change anything. The fate that he has missed reappears again and again, and that is one of the most painful tortures. He tried to move his body. He could even take out the wrench or the gun, but that did not seem to be the right thing to do. It looked like this place was similar to the black and white world. The deeper one went into the mental world, the greater the freedom. However, in the mental world, one's body would be restricted. Fong Bujue smiled and shook his head. He walked forward with a swagger until he reached the girl. Then, he pulled Miko into his arms. Of course, he was a gentleman and did not kiss her. I will not leave you in my life. I love you. He said his lines in a solemn tone. Words that he hadn't said in real life could be considered as satisfying as mouth craving in the game. Since he was saying it on behalf of Hirata-kun, he could say it. Actually, Fong Bujue had once been asked by his girlfriend to say those words, and he had replied, "A man will only say I love you once in his life. When you are about to die, I will say it." Ever since then, there had not been a single girl who was dumb enough to want to be in a relationship with him. He was one of the luckiest people in the world. Current quest completed. All main quests completed. The system announcement came at the right time. Fong Bujue opened the game menu and saw that the 3 unfinished main quests, stay in the house until dawn, explore the mansion, and work until it's time to get off work, were not ticked on the right side. Instead, they were crossed off by several horizontal lines. A new quest appeared. The empty spots seemed to indicate that this quest had been there since the beginning, but he had not been able to see it. Fix Hirata's mental world. As soon as the voice notification sounded, the mission was displayed and a tick was placed on the right side of the mission. Theoretically speaking, Fong Bujue should have heard the teleportation announcement, but strangely enough, he did not hear it. Instead, he returned to the first-person perspective of the cinematic. "Oh, does this scenario have an ending cinematic?" Fong Bujue asked. Not bad. This is more interesting than those that you have to fight. You'll be automatically teleported after watching the ending." That was the system's reminder. The scene before his eyes slowly changed. It was a cloudy afternoon, and he was walking down a street that looked rather familiar. Everything around him was colored, which meant that he should be in the real world of this scenario. Fong Bujue soon recognized that this was one of the streets that he had taken when he first entered the scenario. The camera turned, and 2 figures walked over from afar. It was a man and a woman. The man looked cultured and was wearing a well-fitting suit. The woman was elegant and had an air of elegance about her. She wore a dark-colored jacket. Fong Bujue recognized them as well. They were Hirata Shuichi, who looked to be in his 20s, and Miko, who he had seen earlier. Their conversation gradually sounded in his ears. "We're almost there, right? Hirata-kun. We still need to walk for a while, but we'll be there soon. The traffic in your hometown sure is inconvenient." "Yes, It's a very old-fashioned place." Hirata scratched his head. "You took the tram to come so far, and you still have to walk. That must be hard on you, Miko." Miko shook her head. "No, when I'm with Hirata-kun, it's easier to walk." She lowered her head shyly. Fong Bujue grumbled with annoyance. "Hey, what is this? Is this the plot after I've changed the timeline? I typed good in just to see this kind of stun grenade? Hirata, you'd better die. Oh, by the way, do you know? Not far ahead, there's an old longhouse. I remember when I was young, the old people told me that the place is haunted," Hirata said. "Hey, why are you suddenly bringing that up? Are you trying to set up your own flag?" Fong Bujue had a bad feeling about this. "There are no ghosts in this world. They are just people's imagination," Miko said. Hirata laughed. You have a point." Right then, the camera panned to a panoramic view. In the gloomy sky, a flash of lightning cut across the sky. The second the white light flashed, Fong Bujue saw clearly that on a lamppost, not far behind Hirata and Miko, there was a strange figure wearing a white kimono squatting. Chapter 122. This was the last scene that the scenario left for Fong Bujue. After reading it, he was teleported. When he returned to the login lobby, the screen showed him the result. The scenario has been completed. Calculating reward. Obtained EXP, 5,000. Game coins, 50,000 inch obtained equipment. None missions completed. 3 6-inch completed special and hidden missions. 0. Unlocked world building. None time of terror points increase. 0. Highest terror points, 0%. Average terror points, 0%. Your terror rating is Embodiment of Valor. Extra reward obtained. Please choose later. Obtain skill points, 500 additional bonus from skill points. EXP, 5,000. Game coins, 50,000 inch scenario cleared reward. Puzzle card X2, calculation complete. please continue? Hey, what kind of scam is this? After Fong Bujue was teleported, he did not pay much attention to the result on screen. Instead, he could not help but yell. This ending might as well have a caption that says, Hirata, Shuichi died peacefully in prison. This sort of standard horror movie ending scene is too depressing. Based on normal logic, wouldn't the ending be? Hirata, who just graduated from university, returned home to get married with Miko, and then they were both killed by ghosts? Are you kidding me? He huffed and puffed at the screen. He had cleared the scenario, but he did not feel relieved at all. He did not feel the sense of accomplishment from clearing the nightmare scenario. If anything, he felt quite depressed. But Fong Bujue was, after all, Fong Bujue. He soon calmed down. As a young man who could withstand storms and setbacks, it was perfectly acceptable for him to occasionally play one or two games that caused him to feel depressed. He imagined himself as a speck of dust in the mortal world. He inhaled deeply and exhaled deeply. Sigh. I have to look at things on the bright side. This is a solo survival mode on nightmare difficulty, and the bonus EXP and game coins are the standard for a team survival mode, he thought. Plus, I can draw more equipment. I'd better forget about that horrible ending. Actually, looking at the whole scenario, Fong Bujue was quite lucky to be able to clear the scenario. The scenario was filled with instant death flags, meaning that it was over once triggered. The black and white world earlier in the scenario was a test of the player's terror points. Even though Fong Bujue had lost his sense of fear, as someone who had experienced normal fear for the past 23 years, he knew very well how scary those things were. It was just that he had not reacted to them. If it were any other player, they might have made the wrong choice out of fear. Since the scenario generated by the system was based on the player's characteristics, other than the newbie training, whenever Fong Bujue entered solo survival mode, he would run into a decryption scenario. Accompanied by a sense of urgency and terror, there was almost no chance for a fair fight. Death flags that would kill him with one shot were everywhere. It did not take long for Fong Bujue to realize that the idea of using his terror points to grind for EXP through solo mode was not as simple as it seemed. To gain EXP, clearing the scenario was the prerequisite. If he died in solo mode, he would not get any EXP. However, if he spent the same amount of time in a team scenario, even if he was killed midway, as long as his teammates cleared the scenario in the end, he would at least gain EXP that was proportional to his contribution. Comparing the two, it was clear that team mode was the better option. This was because in team mode, there was a higher margin for error. For example, in the scenario on Hunter's Island, there were 5 players. One had died, and the other had died, but in the end, they still cleared the scenario. The familiar white light gathered, and 2 cards appeared inside the glass tube. The puzzle cards only had a name and did not have a detailed description of the item. Fong Bujue held the 2 cards in his hand. They were puzzle card, sunglasses, and puzzle card, spin. Basically, they had nothing to do with each other. If they were combined with the puzzle card, monkey that he already had, it would be the image that appeared in Fong Bujue's mind was a monkey wearing sunglasses, standing on one leg, and spinning on the spot. That should be impossible, he thought to himself. However, since the card system had been released, he decided to give it a try. He took out the puzzle card, monkey from his storage, and held it in his hand together with the 2 new cards. He opened the menu and selected the combination option. The system notification he got was unable to find a logical sequence. In other words, if 2 or 3 of the 3 cards were placed together, they could not be considered a set. Therefore, Fong Bujue decided to store all 3 cards in his storage. After all, the 10 slots in his storage were empty. After all, a set of cards can be exchanged for excellent quality and above equipment with a 100% chance of success. Fong Bujue thought to himself. He had searched for a set of cards at the market's auction house, but he had not found any. Perhaps it was because the open beta had just started and the puzzle cards were rare to begin with. Or perhaps the players were wary of this and thought that the puzzle cards were one of the most effective ways to obtain perfect quality equipment, so it was not worth it to sell them. Another possibility was, as long as it was a puzzle card, It would be sold out the moment it was put up for auction. That was why Fong Bujue did not see it when he visited the auction house. In any case, Fong Bujue would not sell the puzzle cards so easily. The main reason was that he thought the card system was quite interesting, and he wanted to come up with a series to take a look. Fine, I don't believe that I'll be able to draw something like a baseball bat twice in a row. He walked to the other glass column with murderous intent. Before the system notification even finished, he had already chosen the equipment reward. This time, the thing that was formed by the white light was definitely not a baseball bat or a rock. However, looking at the outline of the equipment, Fong Bujue had a bad feeling. Name: Stool of the 18 bronze statues. Number 5, item type, weapon quality, poor offense points, relatively weak element, none special effect. When attacking a humanoid creature, it will not be damaged, and there is a certain chance of inflicting bleeding on the target. Remark: the stool can be hidden in a civilian's home. You can also sit on it to hide your killing intent. Since it is not considered a weapon, even if you are apprehended by the police, they will not be able to sue you. It is known as the best of the 7 weapons in the market. The stool surface was round, and there was a ladder-shaped support at the bottom. It was made of iron and was black in color. Its appearance did fit the description of poor in the game description. It was old and flawed, but it was better than nothing. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.